Change out with this one.
It's fine.
You sure? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm calling to
That's
session
comic
our
relief.
meeting of January 10th. All rise, please, for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Okay. First I'll need an approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we don't have any emergency modifications.
We
I
do
forgot
not.
to ask that first.
We don't?
And then approval of the minutes from December 6th. I'll need a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then our student representative, Jennifer Patino.
Okay, so Nordoff. In January, we leadership will be holding many events. First, we'll be holding our senior sibling program, where seniors will meet with their freshmen that they have been working with the whole semester to reflect upon the events that they experienced the first semester of high school. We will be also sharing with the student body that prom this year will take place on Saturday, May 6th at the Pierpont Inn in Ventura. Juniors will meet soon to finalize the theme and determine the menu. The recognition committee will begin what hopes to be the monthly tradition of recognizing teachers and students for a variety of improvements and positive acts on campus. We will hold our annual winter rally where we will focus on building Ranger pride, and we will hold our annual morph dance, a casual dance for all students held in the cafeteria. We are thinking of adding some disco to the song list. Summit School. Summit's upper elementary school students enjoyed working with Steve Bartlett, a visiting artist who introduced the art of sand casting. Sand casting is an age-old art form used in many ancient civilizations. It is a process that is used to create a negative impression in a special sand that will be the mold for the plaster casting. Students enjoyed using various objects to make an impression in sand, to which plaster was added to making a casting. They later painted the casting, which brought out the images of the impression. Students created a work of art and followed it up with the stories that represented an interpretation of their piece. Students continued to learn and explore through the class's theme of a watershed. They worked in collaborative groups to create a model of a wetland with an ecosystem that modeled the local flora and fauna of the wetland at the Ojai Meadows Preserve. A field trip is planned for the spring. In science, the third grade students are learning about simple machines. The activity for the students will be put together as a presentation for their classmates on what they've learned. All students will then work collaboratively on a STEM project in which they will be expected to use 3 of the simple machines modeled during their presentation. Miners Oaks. There was a nice article in the Ojai Valley News this week about the project underway at Miners Oaks School. It features teachers who have secured a grant for the school to develop drought-tolerant native plant gardens on campus. The students are teaming up with other students from the Nordoff High School to complete the project. Miramani. We are excited to see so many new personally owned Chromebooks on campus after the holiday. Parents are being reminded that the portable devices guidelines form must be signed before students are allowed to access the district network with their new device. Parents were also reminded that devices with personal data plans are not to be used at school due to the requirement that all student access at school is filtered for content. 6th grade leadership students will soon be selling Valentine grams for $1. This year's Valentine grams will be a small pink owl. They are working on a creative name for the owls. The craft fair before the holiday was such a huge success. Over 60 students participated in making and selling crafts. One of the most important items were the pink pigs made of recycled plastic water bottles. Vendor fees of $5 were donated to one of the 3 nonprofits, $279 to the Humane Society, 80 to Food for Thought, and 85 to Ojai Education Foundation. Our food collection for the help of Ojai was again impressive. The organization greatly appreciated the donations for the food pantry that provides for Ojai families in need. Our primary grade students brought in more donations than the upper grades. Primary grades were awarded a special principal's recess. Our transitional kindergarten students moved into the CDR, aka Smart Start building, when they returned to school after the holiday. It is a perfect room for TK with bathrooms, kitchen, and plenty of space for creativity. Miss Hull and Miss Crawford are happy with their new space. They spent a lot of time over the holiday break preparing for the room. Due to the cold weather, instead of showing a free outdoor movie during January's first Friday's food truck night, PTO sponsored a bingo night in the multi-purpose room with prizes donated by local businesses and families. Lastly, PTO will be sponsoring an after-school jazz, contemporary, and dance tumbling class for primary grade students from January 9th to March 13th. This class will be taught by our transitional kindergarten teacher, Stephanie Hull. And that is it.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask you one question?
Yes.
What is a morph dance?
Oh,
What
anyway,
does that
good
mean?
question.
It's
Shelley's
Okay.
a good-
Sorry.
You know what I mean?
Can you explain? I should know, but.
You know the answer?
Yes.
Good.
So more, what I think of it, it's backwards for prom. And when you think of prom, you think of being
Acronym
fancy
Okay.
and like dressed up. No, more of it's like casual. You could wear a t-shirt, shorts, anything. You don't need to dress up.
Well, not any.
Well, yeah, not anything, but like a shirt and
Don't
shorts.
spoil the story.
No, there is a dress code, but
You should have said that before the principal came in the room.
I didn't say it. But yeah,
I
but
got
that
it
is
now.
it.
Okay, thank you.
It's a fun dance.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Okay, public comments. I do have 3. William Wyrick.
Board Director of the School District, I want to appreciate your allowing me to speak on an agenda item now because I have a planning commission meeting, then we have a council meeting, so I appreciate your indulgence. I have a couple comments to make about the surplusing issue. It is on our agenda tonight for city council discussion. I've had some discussion with Mayor Johnson about this and told him I was going to come and just mention a couple things, and he and I both thought it would be a good idea to do so. All right. Number one, I'm going to request that this board consider, irrespective of any resolutions passed on surplusing, that the notice to other agencies be suspended or at least delayed until there is time for the city and the school district to have some joint discussions. A couple reasons for doing that. Number one, it's in our general plan. And any repurposing of this property outside of education brings you under the sovereignty regulations of the city of Ojai with regard to land use planning. And in our general plan, it actually states that this property here, west of the parcel line, has been identified by the school district. It's in our general plan, which is the constitution for land planning for the city of Ojai. For possible residential reuse as part of the district's consolidation of facilities resulting from a dramatic downturn in student enrollment. The city, it says in our general plan, has conducted exploratory discussions with the district on possible partnership opportunities. I don't believe that's happened, and I think it should, because understand that our general plan guides whatever zoning decisions we make, which are part and parcel of creating value, getting value for the school district out of this property. And I just think that some partnership opportunities that is sort of embedded in the statutes regarding how land is repurposed within city limits, as well as what's in our general plan, suggest that we should have those exploratory discussions, not on the surplusing decision itself, but on the partnership possibilities for realizing mutual benefit and value for the district. And I just wanted to express that opinion. So thank you. And I got
Thank
it
you.
wrong.
I hope you'll get a chance to watch, because we will be discussing it later this evening.
I will be watching.
So tomorrow you
Yeah.
can pull up the video, or
And since you
Thursday, whenever it
and
gets
since
up.
you asked, have you tried watching your videos lately?
Yeah, I watched them on
Okay.
Saturday.
It's hard to hear a little. The audio's not so good.
Well, couldn't disagree more about what happens up here,
Okay.
maybe from the audience.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, just a thought on some audio enhancements perhaps. But anyway, I will watch with interest, and I wish I could stay for the discussion, but I'm unable to.
Bill, can you just clarify what you're proposing with respect to, we're in a statutory framework and that
Yes.
we have to follow the statute's guidelines in terms of giving notice and everything else.
But
So,
you don't have to trigger that 60-day countdown before you have partnership discussions with the city.
so what you're suggesting is that the 60-day obviously will need eventually to be triggered.
Absolutely.
You're just suggesting that the city and other people might want more time to engage it and think about ideas.
Well, in particular, the city, because the land use planning has to go through the city to do anything other than educational use on this property. And obviously, we want to work together. We don't want to have some kind of issue, between the two agencies. Like when you come to planning commission for a rezoning request or something like that, or somebody that you've assigned that position to. There's a lot of issues that could come up if we're not working together, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't want to get into all that detailed discussion. But I think it would behoove both of us to at least have a discussion of all the issues before triggering the 60-day countdown. That's all I'm saying, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
So
That's my position.
I just have one question, just because I'm not completely familiar with all of the details. From your perspective, what is the disadvantage to the city of the 60-day notice going out earlier rather than later?
It puts us in a position of having to, in effect, bid or make an offer if we're interested on the property.
You, as a sole entity?
Well, or as any other agency would have to respond. You have 60 days to have to respond, and then after that 60 days is up, as I understand the law, if no other agency responds, then you're open for taking bids from developers or auctioning. The other issue is it opens up to offers from agencies that are not controlled by voters in the city of Ojai or the Ojai Valley. In other words, you could bring in a federal agency, a state agency, et cetera. And it seems like it's worthwhile exploring a way to keep this, what is existing public land by zone, at least explore opportunities for maintaining it under elected official control, a local elected official control.
But from your perspective, based on what I'm hearing from you, even running the 60-day notice doesn't prohibit us from partnering with the city?
No, it doesn't.
What I thought I heard you say is
No, but it
leaves
opens
the door
up,
open.
it sets up a structure that reduces flexibility after the notice is there, because you have other agencies involved by definition.
Okay, thank you.
That's my perspective on it anyway. Thank you.
Thanks.
Merv?
Thank you for accepting my public comment. Good evening. I'm speaking to you on behalf of the teachers of Ohio Unified, as well as a parent of a second grade student at Miners Oaks. First, I'd just like to convey my appreciation to the work Hank and Andy have done to lay the groundwork for a smooth transition as leadership is set to change. They have adopted new policies and procedures, such as a third revision of the budget, more fiscal accountability to ensure that we're spending the money wisely, and have approached every situation with an attitude of professionalism and collaboration. So thank you, Hank. Thank you, Andy. Second, I'd like to thank the board for working to address the pressing needs of our district on behalf of our students with regards to teacher salaries. The news of the tentative agreement passed with unanimous support from the UFT only reaffirms the gratitude our teachers have to the board in addressing a long-standing problem of teacher compensation. A 4% raise and the opportunities provided for elementary teachers to earn extra income will surely help in 2 areas. First, it begins to address the significant sacrifices teachers have made when they've weathered, as Hank says, the draconian cuts of the Great Recession and accepted 40 days of furlough, or 40 furlough days, and larger class sizes, all with maintaining focus on improving student achievement. Second, it addresses the future challenges of recruitment and retainment for teachers of Ohio Unified. Many current news stories have covered the recent research conducted by the Learning Policy Institute. The Learning Policy Institute was founded by Linda Darling-Hammond, a Stanford professional and widely respected professor in the field of education. The report concludes that the competition for qualified teachers will only increase in the years to come. Retirements, retainment, and fewer graduates from credential programs are fueling this trend. The number one policy recommendation is to increase teacher salaries in schools and communities where salaries are not competitive or able to support a middle-class lifestyle. To conclude, I appreciate the actions taken by the board, Hank and Andy, to improve our situation, and I'm excited about continuing our collaborative relationship and working closely with the board in any issues that you guys would like the OFT to participate with. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Angie, you want to wait, or did you want to speak now?
I can talk now.
Okay.
That's exactly what I wanted Merv to go first. Because he has it all written out. I have some bullet points. I'm Angie Janassi, OFT president for the teachers, certificated teachers. I wanted just to talk just a little bit about negotiations and less about our agreement. I've negotiated for the teachers in the past as a participant, and not as the president. Obviously, I'm new to this last year. And I can say that when I did negotiations in the past, it was so fascinating because we all kind of sat on one side and glared, and the administration and people sat on the other side and glared. And it was this very contentious feeling. And it just was so strange because we're all here working together to do the same thing, educate children. And so, but it had this battle going on. And I just wanted to say that my experience now, last year and this year, has not been that way. We both have our sides, obviously. We all have different opinions about how the money in the school district should be spent. But coming to negotiations this year, I wanted to say that we had a spirit of working together. We collaborated, and of course, we were each side, the teachers and the administration, we were both working to address the needs and our wants for the district and how we wanted to use the money. But we were working together as a whole to come to some midpoint, is what I want to say. And I want to just say that's just an incredible way to negotiate. And I wanted to thank both Hank and Andy and Greg for setting it up that way with us, because it was much more fun than being at battle, and it felt like we were working together even though we were having a different vision. So that's all. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and that's a perfect lead-in to our first item tonight, 7.1.1. The board is asked to approve the 2016-17 school year agreement between the Ohio Unified School District and the Ohio Federation of Teachers. Are there any questions before we take an action?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I think that increasing teacher pay is absolutely the right thing to do. I think this approach is absolutely the wrong way to do it. So I'm going to be voting no on this, and I think it's important that I explain why, because it's not about not paying teachers more. In fact, I think it's because we're selling ourselves short. Ojai Unified School District has never paid teachers less because we didn't want to pay teachers, you know. It's always been that we didn't have the money to do it. And we didn't have the money to do it because the way other districts in the county have money to do it is because they either have a lot of students under the poverty line or because they have parcel taxes paying for that additional money. And we have, as a district, gone out twice for parcel taxes with the message that we're in financial crisis, we need your help, please help us because we really need it. There's been a lot of sacrifice over the last many years. I know Dr. Bangser has been out very aggressively changing the hearts and minds of some of our critics. And a lot of sacrifice has been made by teachers and other staff, and a lot of hard decisions have been made by the board over the years. And we are, for the first time, in a position where I feel like we're on strong financial footing. And we have an ability, a very small window, to go out to our community and say, we've made a lot of tough decisions, we're on strong financial footing, we need your help because our teachers are underpaid. And I felt like we had the best chance that we've had in decades, both past and future, to fundamentally change how much money we have to pay. Instead, we're agreeing to pay, we could afford a 2% raise within the budget. What we're agreeing to within 3 years is going to be $1 million more than we have. And we don't have a plan to pay for it. And usually when you don't have a plan to pay for it, you end up laying off teachers and increasing class sizes. So I see this vote as straight up increasing class sizes, which I absolutely don't want to do. I want to change the whole dynamic. I want more money for everybody. And so that's why I'm personally discouraged and why I can't support it. But I'm thrilled that teachers are getting more money, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll speak. I appreciate Thane's comments and his perspective. I come at the question probably from a similar perspective, and I think everybody in this room comes at it from that perspective, which is that we want Ojai schools to be the best schools possible, and we want to honor the incredible personnel that we have here in Ojai, which I don't think I'm a Pollyanna to say is really extraordinary. I mean, there is something about Ojai that has, for whatever great reasons, attracted extraordinary people. And as I've said, and I believe, a great teacher could walk into a field with a couple of rocks. And this is not a pitch for Jim Bailey's school about rocks. Rock, tree, sky. And do a great job of teaching a lesson, changing somebody's life. It's really the teachers that do it. So it is true that based on current estimates, in the third year out, our granting of a 4% raise to the teachers will be put us in a deficit position. It is also true, however, that historically our finances in the district, at least in recent memory, have typically been much better than we have predicted at any given point. Thus, the future condition financially of the district has been better when we got to the future than it appeared at the point in time when we were projecting it. So what we're faced with is a question: do we take action now, agree to a raise now that we know we can pay for now, with the hope that history will repeat and our financial condition will be better. But with also the recognition that we, as Angie said, we know how to work collaboratively. We're all in this together. And I'm willing to take a leap of faith, to the extent that this requires a leap of faith, on the basis that I know that if we arrive at a point where we need to make cuts, that we'll make those cuts rationally and together, and into the best effect for our kids and our school. But the truth is that Ojai's teachers currently get about 15% lower than their peers around this county. And even giving them 4% more, you can do the math. It doesn't close that gap beyond that 4%. So, and I know Thane, and respect Thane, and really do know that his heart is in exactly the place it should be. I make these comments just to tell you why I will be voting in favor of the raise.
You don't have to speak.
No, I think it's important.
Okay.
Because in large part, I actually agree with Thane. This is a very difficult thing to be doing. The deficit is 3 years out, but it's 3 years out if we do nothing, right? Because that's what that projection was based on. 3 years of status quo. I don't expect us to do nothing in the next 2 to 3 years. I don't expect Andy to do nothing in the next 2 to 3 years. I expect us, and we've already started that process of examining our budget minutely to see where money is. I've already telegraphed, and I think Andy would do it on his own, that I expect to not see business as usual over the next few years because we can't afford business as usual. So I expect our administrators to be finding ways to deliver the services that we do more economically or more creatively. That being said, our teaching staff is at the bottom of the market in the county. And that can only go on for so long before we implode. And I have real concerns about it because it's been going on for so long already. So I will be supporting the increase, but it will be with a healthy dose of expectation of our administration.
So there.
So you're on notice.
Shelley?
Any questions for Angie or
Can I add one other thing, which is, I appreciate Thane's comments about potentially, going to the community with a parcel tax. And I hope that the takeaway is not that this action today is irresponsible. I hope that the takeaway is that our district desperately needs additional funds. We have unusual characteristics. It doesn't really get cheaper, and we're going to have a big meeting about how we spend our money in this district in a week on the 17th. But, it's kind of, we have a fabulous school system. My kids are in it, fabulous teachers, great opportunities. But for complicated reasons, the financial condition of our district is not great. And it's not because it's not a well-run district. It's not at all because of that. And I appreciate what Michael's saying. We can do even better. But we probably will go to the community and ask for money, and I really hope the community recognizes that it's a true need, and our school district is such a jewel. We are doing our best, but if you compare us and how efficient we are to other districts, we're efficient. It's just the circumstances of this district, the nature of the population of kids we have, the increased gentrification of Ojai, it makes it really hard. But I know everyone up here has the same feeling that we want every nickel to be well spent, and I hope that the message is not that we are, profitably throwing. Notice how I just threw that word out there. I'm not really sure how you say it, so I'm just gonna run over it. But we're not just spending money. We really have to do this, in my view. We have to do this.
guess it's my turn. And being the newbie up here, I have not really practiced my soliloquies well, so bear with me. But I will be voting yes because I agree with Thane. It does put us in a sticky situation in the future. But by not doing it, we're also putting ourselves in that sticky situation because we are gonna need to recruit teachers. And it's important to move that salary schedule up in order to create the best atmosphere in those often crowded classrooms as we can. We need to recruit excellent teachers into this district. So we have, it's, as Kevin said, we have to do it. So, I'm short.
Yes.
Well, what I wanted, as
Speak loudly because we don't have a very good sound system.
Trust me, I can speak loudly. What I
Which
wanted to
we
say-
saved money on the sound system to help with it.
When Thane was speaking, I understand your concerns, and I respect that you have those concerns. At the same time, what you were saying in the future is what's happened in the past. So if we don't have the money, where you're going to get that money is by making our class sizes bigger and laying off teachers. And we've already been through that. And we're willing as a group to say, we want this 4% raise, and we're willing to have our class sizes go up if they have to. And if people have to be laid off, that may be what has to happen. So I feel like we take that risk as well as you taking that risk. We're taking that risk as well. I can also say that people they feel so honored and so thought of just by 4%. Just by 4%. And 4% isn't that much. But just that little bit, you can see, like, I not see it, I have emails and comments all over the place with people saying, wow, thank you. And it isn't just your usual thanks, good job, whatever. It's a heartfelt thank you of finally, people are thinking of us. And I do believe you think of us. I know you do. I'm here, I listen. I know that you do. But sometimes the only way that you can let somebody know that you appreciate them is by giving them something and doing what we do as a society to let people know that they're valued. So I feel like I understand, but I also think the people who are taking the risk are ultimately us, because we're the ones who will probably be laid off. We're the ones who are going to have bigger class sizes. It's going to impact our everyday life. So that, I just wanted to make sure you understand, we're taking the risk too.
I totally appreciate that, and my deepest concern is that I want to be able to do more, and I'm afraid that doing this now totally forecloses our ability to do more in the future. And that is where, because I feel like we have this one moment and we could grab it, and I think we lose it. And that's my concern. I love the teachers. I want to pay us. I was enthusiastically supportive of giving all of our money to the teachers. I couldn't go $1 million more than everything we had. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, so is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Or nay. I know, nobody ever votes no.
do it so rarely.
We don't even know how to do it.
Okay, so the motion is approved, 4-1. 7.1.2, board is asked to approve salary increases of those employees not covered by negotiated agreement.
If I could just say, I felt like we had a closed session discussion on the matter, and I didn't feel like we came to a satisfactory conclusion in the time we had. And I would recommend that we spend some more time in a closed session defer this to another meeting if possible.
I would support that.
Yeah, I think it's a bit early to bring this. I'd like to have a little bit more conversation. Frankly, I'd like to see negotiations complete. So,
Okay, so I'm just gonna assume that that's 3 people who spoke, so Shelley, you and I will agree to postpone a vote on 7.2 to a future meeting and another closed session. Does that sound right? 7.1.3, variable term waiver for employment of part-time school counselor, Bronwyn Carmichaels. I'll need a motion to approve,
Can I
unless there's any
move to
question.
approve? I would like to vote yes on something.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 7.1.4, 2016-17 initial proposal for contract negotiations from OUSD, California School Employees Action. Did you, Andy, want to say something about?
Sure, so just be brief. This is the first of 2 agenda items that you'll see on this matter. This is the first year, I apologize, we're in our second year of a 3-year settlement agreement with Classified School Employees Association. As part of that contract, we have the ability each year to reopen certain items within the contract. Pursuant to the contract, it is salary, benefits, and 1 item each, one requested by CSEA, 1 by district management. This letter is what's referred to as a sunshine letter, which allows us to initially open negotiations based on the initial proposal from CSEA and then our response, the next agenda item. I appreciate the very kind words that OFT spoke earlier, and I'm very confident that CSEA and district leadership will have the same sort of collaborative negotiation process.
Any questions?
Open a public hearing?
Oh, okay. I'd like to open a public hearing in order to take action to accept the proposal. Anyone wish to speak on it?
A motion to
I'll
open.
move to open the hearing.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
second it.
Do I need to take a vote on opening?
Please.
Sorry. No? Okay.
I always need a vote.
Does anyone wish to
yes, I'm
speak
sorry,
on it?
yes.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
okay,
yes.
yes, all right.
To
So
open
is
the
there a
public
vote to
hearing,
open the public meeting?
Yeah,
All
aye.
those in favor? Sorry,
Aye.
aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Okay. So, I
Any
didn't get
comments?
any notice that anyone wants to speak now that we've brought it up and spoke. Chuck, did you want to?
May I speak?
Of course.
President CCA.
Come to the podium.
Thank you. I've been to quite a few of your board meetings, and I think some of you know me as, I use the word dynamic a lot. And you represent the dynamic both in the questions and your interest. And I appreciate all the comments that were made earlier, because we've all taken a very hard journey in the last 10 years. And I'm very grateful to have been able to work with Hank and people and making people whole, because it does come down to the student and making this whole experience whole. Working with Andy, I feel like we're on that same path. And it's my concern to be realistic. It's not just what we pay for something, but what it actually costs. And I'm willing to have that conversation. I know PERS is of an interest, right? But I just want you to know that I'm being realistic, because we too have taken a lot of hits, and we do not appreciate the way the schools look. But with the resources that we have encouraged volunteering within the district and the projects, because we have a resource in this community that's fabulous. Working together is important. So as we go forward, I want to go forward realistically. And when the county tells me that housing costs have gone up 78% in 10 years, I think we all feel that in some regard, whether it's our children or grandchildren. So I just thank you for opening this and look forward to having a realistic conversation as we have in the past. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Anyone else? Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move to close.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Is there anyone who needs further discussion? So, I'm assuming the motion at the bottom, Kathy, is to approve the initial proposal for negotiations.
Yes.
Yeah? So I'll need another motion.
I'll move.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Oops, excuse me. 7.1.5, initial district proposal to OUSD California School Employees Information. So this is not a item for a motion, but just information.
Correct, so this is the, second agenda item on the same topic. Again, the one that you just voted to accept was CSEA's proposal to us. This is our response. We are choosing not to, or we're electing not to open a separate article. We instead will just negotiate the 3 items that CSEA has requested: salary, health and welfare and benefits, and leaves, vacation leaves.
Any questions for Andy?
Andy, what would be an example of something that we would initiate in addition to their list?
Well, any article in the contract that we were interested in seeing a modification to. So, in my prior position, the district or the county office wanted to change language regarding who was considered a family member for purposes of taking certain types of leave. And so the district took that position of wanting to make an adjustment to the agreement. So any aspect of the agreement, whether or not it's working conditions, pay, or leave-related benefits, or even the rights of employees for transfers or notification rights and discipline, any article could be opened.
Thanks.
This is the last reopener, next year's full contract?
No, next year will be the year 3. So then it expires June 30th, 18. So we could potentially be opening the contract again in 17, 18.
I think it would be important before that time for us to actually see the entire contract then, next January.
I can give it to you tomorrow.
That's okay, give it to me next January. Well, maybe it'll take me that long to get through it. Okay. And moving on to 7.2.1, single plan for student achievement for Matilda Junior High School.
Yes.
Welcome Javier and Carol.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here again, and Happy New Year to all of you.
Happy New Year.
So, I'd like to take you guys back a little bit to the last time we were here. And if you remember, that was a data presentation, and we talked about data and the state tests and all the numbers and the graphs. And one of the things that came to light, and it was concerning for us, and I think it wasn't just for Matilda, but district-wide, it was the gap that there is with our socio-economically disadvantaged students. So when we developed the single plan and the goals, we kept that in mind. So,
Can I stop you, Javier?
Yes,
Just
yes.
want to say for the audience and everyone, that actually that was our intention, was to talk about data and testing separately
Yes.
from the single plan. So that's why we're bringing you back again.
yes, and that's why I'm trying to refresh your minds.
Great.
What happened. So, we came up with 3 goals. Can you guys see that okay? Should we dim the lights a little bit? So goal number 1 falls in under the category of academic. What are we doing at school to help to meet the needs of our students? And then goal number 2 falls under the reaching out to families and creating partnerships with our community and our parents. And then goal number 3 has to do with the positive reinforcement that we have, Matilda had the expectation that we have for student behavior.
So Javier, this is in your first page of the executive summary.
Pardon me?
First page of the executive summary as well as the slide, right?
Yes.
Okay. thanks.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So for goal number 1, we are continuing with some of the things that we feel are successful at our school, which is the after-school help, twice a week, the Saturday Math Academy, the tutorial enrichment every week. We have a reading and intervention class that we offer during the day. We have 2 academic support classes that we offer also during the day. Those are offered during 6th period. Intervention classes offered during 5th period. What I'd really like to focus on this evening is one of our new initiatives, which is our peer tutoring program. And I talked a little bit about it last time we were here, and I think Thane is the one that brought it up, and I said, Thane, come down, I'll show it to you during our single plan. So this is it.
You're always telling me that.
So I'd like to show you, I can stand up here and talk about the peer tutoring program, and for those of you who know me, you know how much I like to talk in public. So I'm gonna have to sacrifice some of that right now. And I wanna have the students that actually are the peer tutors show you what they do every Thursday. And by the way, we have 30 volunteer peer tutors. Right now, I brought 4 to show you what they do every Thursday with kids in groups of 3, sometimes 2, sometimes 1-on-1. So what I like to do right now is I like to set up the boardroom so they can teach you a mathematical concept, which you might have heard of. It's called slope, S-L-O-P-E, slope. So they're gonna talk to you about that. So make sure you take some notes. Okay, we have Greta come up here, and then we have Carlos, we have Andre, and we have Abby, who are wonderful peer tutors who are going to show you how to do slope. So let's go ahead and set up. You want to set this one in?
Hand me that if you want to. Just we'll get rid of it off here.
Maybe right here, and then we can group, Michael, if you don't mind moving over here, that would be great. Or maybe I can just leave the desk there.
Sure, we turn the light back on.
And the thing, and Jane right here in this corner, and then we can have.
Okay.
You want to sign something while you're waiting?
It has to be math. Really?
Right? No, I don't have to distract you, but
No.
Okay, we do this one?
here's for
Yeah, you
diplomas.
got this one, right?
So your signature for diplomas.
Then we have Hank and Kevin, you see that. And then we have.
And then just these 2 minutes. November, remember I didn't give it to you to sign?
Yeah, we can do that.
January. That was not very much. Hi. Okay, and you must be Greta? Yes. Wonderful. Oh, that looks scary to me.
This is algebra.
I'm gonna have room there, Carlos, you wanna move that up?
It looks a lot harder than actually.
I said it would be math. And this is algebra.
Okay, so as you can see in part 1, the question says, find the slope, or m, between the 2 points, -2 and 4, -3, by using the equations for slope. And you can see the equation there. So you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to take those 2 points.
See what they're not getting, and then.
-2?
The second number is
Let's see, your 2 points.
How do you know which is y and which is x?
so this pair of these are So as you can see, there's
Oh,
two
y.
numbers in each point. X is the first number and Y is the second number.
Okay.
X and
All right, all right.
Okay. Okay. X is the, second number.
Yes. Okay. And so the first equation, find M. And M is pretty much next slope, or how steep the line is. You have to take Y to number 2, which is the second box, which would be -3.
Okay.
So minus, we need to
So first one, five into 2 points.
Y, or the first one, which is 6. So we have over the second X,
Okay.
4. So you're out of bed.
Y, I'm starting over here. That's as a little cheat sheet, so that's X, Y, and X, Y.
Yes.
Okay.
And so, in order to come up with the equation, we have to find the second X, or the second Y, this should be -3.
So the second Y, so I could put -3 here?
Yes.
Okay.
And then Y1, which is 6.
6, okay.
So
So we've used that and we've used that.
And
Okay.
it'd be -3 minus 6.
Negative 3 minus 6.
And then you have to do the x's, which is the second x, which is 4.
4
Minus the first x, which is negative 2.
Okay, I still don't know how to do that. It's been way too
You
long.
pretty much use this and then plug in the points. Okay, so now you have to do is negative 3 minus 6.
I don't know how to do that.
Okay,
So how do I determine, because I'm 57 and I haven't done this since I was your age. How do I determine what negative 3 minus 6 is?
the way I visualize it in my mind, I have negative 3. I think of it as 3 things, but they're not there. Negative.
Oh, okay, so
negative 3.
like if this is 1, I have 3 negatives over here.
3 negatives, yeah.
Okay,
And then you take away 6.
okay. So if I take away
If you take away 6, it would be going more
4,
negative.
5, 6,
So
so we
you're
have to
here,
go this way.
and so you have to take away more 6.
So it's a negative 6?
Minus 6, it's the same thing as saying negative plus.
Back up 3 and then back up 6 more. What?
Same thing as,
So it really means negative 9?
yeah. So if you do negative 3 minus 6, it's saying negative 3 plus negative 6.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I got that right.
Okay.
But for us,
You gave a good answer, right?
it's the exact same thing.
Okay. So I have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 1 and negative 2.
Oh, okay. All right. So then that ends up being 2. Oh.
And you subtract negative 2.
Okay.
Same thing, so that's exactly the negative 9. Add.
Oh, I see.
So it'd be 6.
Okay. So we have a negative 6 and a 6 that we now have to chart on this 9.
Negative 9.
I'm so sorry.
So it'd be negative 9 over 6.
Okay.
So that's not the point.
Okay.
Then you have to do a division problem. And I'm taking this here, and this is just equals negative 5.
Okay. Right.
So negative 1.5, you pretty much have answered part 1.
Okay.
That's it, negative 1.5. And then you have to go on to part 2. And part 2 says, how can you use the coordinate plane graph to obtain to the same solution as and what you do, I'm just going to use this.
Okay.
So X equals,
So if you have a graph,
how do we find?
Okay. We're almost there. We have to mark them. Okay, so negative 2 and
negative 6.
oh, I see.
And then I usually just record like negative 3.
It's going to be down here. Just a diagonal line, really?
But the numbers I get.
Okay,
So do you have
do you see any
see, I like,
where that is?
I mean, let's see, like, Steve's slide. If you saw that number, would you have an idea?
More of the negative 1.6.
Thoughts on it?
Well, let's find out. Okay, if you have negative 9, it's going down, it's below 0. You have to go down.
Everybody's having a lot of fun, we gotta wrap it up because we have 2 more schools to go.
So if you're down 9,
Just wrap it up.
negative 3.
You guys have to finish it up. Finish it up so we can do you.
Am I right here? It's at negative 3.
6.
Wrap it up, Lawrence. Wrap it up.
Right.
Good job.
Over, oh, all the way over to that dot?
So it ends there. So it's the slope is negative 9 plus 6.
Oh,
Oh.
negative 9 over 6.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
Mine didn't quite work out.
I don't think I
Thank
can
you.
describe it again.
Do you want to do that anymore?
Thank you, Andre.
I don't know.
Oh, here.
Right here, right here.
Thane changed his mind.
Okay, that's a 6.
And negative
I lost the math.
Thank you.
3. Oh,
4, 6, 6,
Do you guys have any questions for our peer tutors?
6.
There you go.
7, 8, 9.
I have one. Are you ever in a situation where a student
It's minus
There
9
you go.
because it's down there.
oh,
argues with you and says that
Positive 6
doesn't
'cause
work?
it's over there.
And
very good.
so what do you do in that situation?
The time of my extension.
This has to, you have to work through it mathematically and logically and show them that you are correct or learn that you made a mistake to correct yourself. And if that doesn't work, then we do dial in his extension.
We have Mr. Roberts oversees the program, and he's a math guy. He used to be a math teacher at the high school.
Do you do this mostly after school, or when do you do it mostly?
During Thursday.
So it's on Thursdays, right after fourth period.
Okay, so you're doing this kind of as a class?
Yeah.
Tutorial enrichment's about
Tutorial
20
enrichment is about 35 minutes. We have room 7 that we designed with this in mind. So when you walk into room 7, all you see is a bunch of whiteboards and desks that are foldable. So we have 7 stations there. So every Thursday I have 7 kids doing this, and they're teaching a concept based on the needs of the teachers. So like Mrs. Perkins, Mrs. Keenan, and Mrs. Hendrickson, they are in charge of letting me know every Monday name of kids and topics that they need help on. So what I do is I take those names and I group them, okay? And sometimes they provide me with materials. Sometimes I search materials myself. I mean, if I know the concept, I can just go online and search it, or sometimes I have it on my library of mathematical things that I have. And I get the packages together for them, for the peer tutors. And there's a spot in the office that they know that by Wednesday, they gotta go to the office and they gotta pick up their packet. So that gives them a day, sometimes 2 days, if they pick it up on Tuesday, to make sure that they know the concept before they actually get to teach it. And the positive side effect that this has had, which I didn't think of until I actually talked to Mrs. Perkins, she's the one that brought it up. She said that sometimes the peer tutors, if I give them the concept, if they pick it up, say on Tuesday, and let's just say it's a slope, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't remember how to do this. They'll go back to the teacher and say, can you please reteach me how to do this? So it's a win-win for everybody, I think. And so far, so good. It's been fairly successful. We have, like I said, at most 21 kids every Thursday getting tutored by their peers.
So the tutors aren't every week? You said you
No,
have 30 tutors?
I have 30, so I have
and-
7, exactly.
Okay.
So I tell them at least once a month you are going to be tutoring. And they know when because I post it on our school website. So they know ahead of time when they're going to go ahead and do it. And it's their responsibility, if they can't do it for that day, it's their responsibility to find a replacement.
What are the eligibility requirements for the peer tutors?
What I did is, again, this is a kind of like a pilot program. I didn't know how well it was going to work or if it was going to work at all. So what I did, I started with math, okay? And I went into the advanced math classes.
Okay.
And I said, I need some volunteers because here's what I'm going to try out and love to have you on board if you want to give it a shot. So I have 30 kids that decided to do it. So my goal is to expand that, not just to do it with math, but to do it with other subject areas too. But so far so good. Yeah. So that covers, let's see, where were we? Part of goal number 1. Thank you guys. Thank you. You guys get a free lunch pass tomorrow, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
By the way, just a side note, when I asked Greta if she wanted to do it, she's like, yeah, I'll do it, but only under one condition. And she looked at me like this. Make sure I don't get my mom.
Make sure what?
She doesn't
Make
have
sure I don't
to
get my mom. Don't worry, I'll put you on the other side.
She was fabulous.
Far away as you get.
Yeah. So our goal number 2 has to do with reach out to the community and parents, but I want to come back to this in a minute. What I like to do is I like to go to goal number 3 that has to do with our
Can I ask
behavior.
you a
Yes.
question first about
Yes.
goal number 1?
Yes.
So how do you decide, I mean, some of these items were, my son's a senior, you were doing them when he was in 8th grade. So how do you know whether they're successful or not without, I mean, is it,
That's a good question. Sometimes it's easy to use a metric and find out whether something is successful or not. Sometimes it's not so easy. what I did is, I'm gonna pass this out. Yeah, sure.
Take them all.
And I did a little research, knowing that question might come up. And I listed a few things on that sheet of paper that you're gonna get, and I'm not sure how you determine success, right? First of all, we do have the option, and that makes a success in itself, right? That we have offerings and options for kids to get extra assistance. If you look at, for example, the academic support class right on top there is offer period 6. We have 7th and 8th grade. For example, in the 7th grade, you can see that the number of students that we have there is 23. On the 8th grade, we have 21 students with academic support there. And what I did is just really briefly, I look at the number of Fs, or no Fs actually, that the kids have. So if you look at 7th grade, 61% of those kids currently don't have any Fs out of their 6 classes. For the 8th grade, 76% of those kids have no Fs. So we believe that if we were not offering this, I think those kids will find that it will not be in that category. I truly believe that, okay? And it's a fluid class, so kids who are there doesn't mean they're gonna be there for the whole year. Okay, they're there, they achieve the goal, in the academic support class, also keep in mind that a lot of times they might need help with organization instead of math. And the teachers are going to help them with their organization skills. So once they graduate from that class, that opens up the spot for somebody else to take it. And we usually do have, we keep a kind of like a waiting list, so when a spot opens, we can just go ahead and replace them. Because the idea is that they're not gonna be there for the entire year. Although in some cases that might be the case. So that's for the academic support. If you look right below, we have the after-school math help. That's voluntary. We don't keep a roster. We don't take attendance of that. That's twice a week, every Monday and Thursday, right after school. And roughly on average, for 7th grade, we have about 30 kids a week. That means about 15 kids per session. And for 8th grade, we have about 40 kids, so about 20 kids per session. And we gotta keep in mind that we're paying the teachers an extra hour of their time. So if you do the math, unless I messed up there, it comes out to about $1.33 per student contact. So that's a pretty good deal, right? I mean, the students have a place where they can go and get the assistance that they need. Right below that, we have our reading support, which is offered period 5. For trimester 1, we have 16 kids. And we have a program that assesses the grade level, or reading grade level equivalent in reading. The trimester 1, we have 16. Right now we have 9, and again, those kids have tested out. Once they reach the goal of grade level equivalent, they're ready to move on and get an elective instead of having that class. I listed some names that I have, and I actually have the copies right here. I didn't want to put their names, obviously. But right there you have a student. I just picked A, B, C, D out of those 9, and you can see their growth. Some of them have grown dramatically, some of them haven't, but at least they do show some growth from trimester 1 to trimester 2. So
it's different for each one. You just,
absolutely,
I know, like the tutorial,
Yeah.
it's how the teachers are feeling, students are responding to.
yeah,
the
and then
extra
obviously
help.
the peer tutoring is another intervention that we use. There's brand new, and we think it's very valuable whenever we empower our kids to become the go-to people on campus, and you give them leadership roles.
How long have you been doing the academic support classes?
Academic support classes, I believe they've been on for the last 2 years. Yeah. Okay. Ms. Piquet will talk about some of the things that we have there for goal number 3.
Okay, so we're gonna talk first. Our Pride Assembly is an assembly that we do every year that outlines our expectations for our students, and these are also posted in all of the classrooms when we go over this. And some of these things you're gonna see we've been doing year after year, and that's because they work. And then I also wanna talk about something new that we've done. So, go back to the other side. We, of course, have our anti-bullying forums, and my office door is always open for students to come and discuss it with me. We do research and investigate any bully forms that we get. Also, in the Pride Assembly, we talk about the academic code of honesty, where we talk about plagiarism and cheating, academic honesty, and all of those things are reflective of their citizenship grades if they decide that they are not going to, of course, follow the rules. One thing that we have started this year, which is brand new, which we're really excited about, again, happens during our tutorial class. When a student, it actually started when we were doing the anti-bullying. If the kids were bullying they're not doing this alone, they're doing it in a group. So what we decided to do as part of their consequence is during tutorial, they meet with Miss Murphy, Janine Murphy, who was just here, and they are reflective of what they have done and what they could do better, and they talk about those consequences. Not all of the situations are bullying situations. Most of the time, really, we've had a very minimal amount. They've been other situations that the kids have gotten themselves into, and again, they're not alone when they do it, so they, as part of their consequence, meet with Miss Murphy during tutorial time to discuss and reflect on what they did. So Javier and I have a campus of respect. That's our #1 goal on our campus, is that students are respectful of each other, they're respectful of the teachers, and it goes both ways. The teachers are respectful of the students. So that's our #1 goal for our campuses.
I'm just curious, about how often do you get those bullying forms?
I get a bully form 2 or 3 times, maybe a month. They're not always bullying per se. And then those results are graphed by Janine Murphy. I send her the results.
And it also depends on the time of the year. It's interesting how it kind of peaks right after Christmas, you know, so.
Yeah. But honestly, we've probably had 2 bullying incidences that we were able to diffuse this year, and that's all. In fact, Javier and I were talking the other day at snack and lunch, just saying our discipline and our behavior this year
is the best it's been.
It's phenomenal. It really is.
So expect those kids over at North.
It's not that I don't need a job, because I do the discipline and I want my job, but it does seem to have.
It's going very, very well.
Well, maybe it's because you've been doing such a good job.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, going back to #2, so reaching out to parents. I still run my COPA meetings. As a matter of fact, we had one last night. And last year, I took the parents over to Cal State Channel Islands. That was a pretty fun trip. This year, I'm taking them to UCSB. Okay, and actually, the district provides the transportation, but it's paid by Rotary. Rotary sponsors that trip. So that's always kind of cool. And the big thing this year is our newscast, a week at a glance. I don't know how many of you guys have had the opportunity to check that out. Okay, so what I'd like to do is actually show you here. Let me just go to the end, because I actually need the website here. I gotta go to my computer. So here is our YouTube channel for Matilda Junior High School News. Okay, I did not make this. A 7th grader made it. Okay, they said, Mr. Ramirez, you can make that look pretty cool. I said, really? I have no idea how. Can you do it? So they went ahead and did it. I don't know how they did it, but they actually made it happen. They took the eagle from Matilda, and anyway, so here's our YouTube channel. So you can see all the week at a glance. We do it English and Spanish. And it's still a work in progress. I think we've definitely come a long ways, and we're in the process of buying a green screen and some professional microphones, and I mean the whole thing. So next year, expect some big stuff with explosions on the back. I mean, you name it.
Moonwalks.
Yeah. So I like to end our presentation here with a video that an observation that I made. Okay. So
What was in our research?
it was
in the data?
Yeah.
It was in the data.
Yeah. So. We talk about gaps, and there's obviously a gap between genders, right? There's always been a gap between genders. And the question always like, why? Why is there a gender gap? Why are girls always outperforming boys? And as a matter of fact, last year, if you remember, Mr. Rosen had us do a group study on minds of boys. Talk about the difference in the brain, the boy versus the girl, and universities spend millions of dollars doing this. And I'd like to just share with you that all of that comes down to this 2-minute video that I'm going to show you. An observation that I made when these guys were filming the week at a glance. Okay, remember, I just give them the paper and I say, here's the week at a glance, and go ahead and read it. And that's it. They're in charge of recording it. They're in charge of doing everything. Okay, so here it is. Why are boys different than girls?
Hello, this is Week at a Glance, November 28th through December 2nd, 2016. I'm Lily.
And I'm Cheyenne.
Sup guys, Ryan and Philip here with the weekly newsletter Week at a Glance.
Why do I always do this? The library will now be open on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday for an extra hour after school.
HS Nordoff High School Dance Program J at OUSD.org. I really am bad at pronouncing names, Philip.
Well, yes, you are. I'm sorry.
Cheesecake order redelivery is scheduled for Tuesday, December 6th during 6th period. A call
13th at 8 p.m. at Oxnard.
The DJ party is scheduled for Tuesday, December 6th during lunch for all students that sold 6 or more cheesecakes at our fundraiser.
Do I see something? Damn! Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
so I
While
can
we're at
read
it,
something.
you should fix this.
Well, you know what?
Just keep reading.
So prices go up to.
Athletics. Cross country will be on September 23rd at Cabrillo Rush Clubs. Drama and Dance Club is on Monday at 2:30, room 7. Ukulele in service, no school is on October 10th. Mail Trial 1 report cards on October 20th. Veterans Day, no school on November 11th. End of first trimester will be on November 18th, and it's a minimum day. Thanksgiving break, no school, is November 21st through November 25th. Every Wednesday is 1:18 dismissal.
There you have it. That's why girls outperform boys every time.
Could we just make our school just girls only?
You didn't just say that.
Put it on an agenda for.
The only thing I'll tell you is at some point in the next 25 years, it sort of evens out.
Yeah. And that does it for us, so thank you.
I have one question for
Yeah.
you, Javier. We've talked about the socioeconomic gap, and so often technology goes along with that, and kids who are falling in that socioeconomic gap don't have the
means.
computers or internet access or whatever, and so much of our curriculum now is computer
Web-based,
driven. Is there a place they can go after school to?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because this year will be the first year since I've been there that we actually opened up our library after school. So we started that right after the data presentation. And I don't know who it was, somebody mentioned, it might have been Nora for another school that said we're extending our library hours. So Carol and I went back to the drawing board and said, how can we make this happen? So since then, we actually opened up the library 3 times a week for an extra hour.
And
Because
is
of
it
that.
being used?
So far, it depends. It depends, obviously, the time of the year and if there are any big tests coming up. But yeah, it has been,
And what the assignments
used,
are.
yes. Mhm.
If they have
Yeah.
an assignment.
But I think that's one of the things that the academic support class really does come into place, because it gives the kids a place to do that, Every day I'm checking out, 6 to 8 Chromebooks, because the kids are, finishing up an assignment or doing some research or you need help with something.
And the computer labs are open during tutorials, so they're able to do that.
And that brings up a question. Jennifer, when she was giving her report, talked about the Chromebook policies, and maybe this isn't the right time, but I didn't quite get the policy about if you have your own plan that you can't access.
I think that was about whether you could access the internet through an independent means other than the local Wi-Fi at the school, because the Wi-Fi at the school is filtered. I mean, rarely would somebody have the ability to go up to a satellite link or something.
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
Dave, is that right?
Yeah, I'll step up towards the microphone. Yeah, so we did have one issue in the beginning of an iPad that came on the campus with a data connection, T-Mobile, pay-as-you-go type connection.
Oh, okay, they're using it with their mobile phones.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah, so they became a hotspot, sharing things they should not have been.
Okay, got it.
So we just kind of said for now, and trained all of our lab technicians to look for any networks that aren't OUSD or the local.
So they can use their Chromebooks, they just can't use a hotspot.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so that they
Got
are filtered and going through the proper channels.
No, that makes perfect sense. Great, thank you.
It's an example of the literal use of proper channels.
Oh, let's move on.
All right, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you. Now, the single plan for student achievement for chaperone. Becky? Oh,
You can
okay.
do that, because that's going to get formal action.
Unless they're waiting. Did
No,
you
they're not
wanna-
waiting, no, I'm sure
Okay.
they're not wondering.
Okay. I'm
mean, you can do
assuming
it if
we're
you
gonna
want.
approve all plans at the end, or did you guys wanna do them each individually?
I'm fine doing them all at once. Either way.
For Chaparral, I wanted to focus tonight on the importance for us of connections with our community and community partnerships, and really our school would not thrive without them and might not even survive without them. And we've had a lot of great programs that we've been able to introduce just the last couple of years, thanks to these community partnerships. And I have brought with me Alex Yanez, who has taken advantage of some of these programs, and I want to make sure she has plenty of time. But some of the things that we've been able to introduce are, first of all, a career technical program that started last year. Last year we had a horticulture class and a graphic production technologies class. And this year we were able to add hospitality and tourism management to that. It's at no cost to us, no cost to the district. It's completely paid for through the BC Innovates grant. They send us the teachers as well. So materials, teachers, field trips, completely paid for. Linda Stribus, who was previous dean of students at Chaparral, is teaching a music practicum course. And basically, Linus and the kids are jamming in the auditorium once a week, and Linus has told me he's tried this in the past. He's never had a group of such talented students who are really serious about their music and really having fun with it. So it's, if you ever get a chance, Tuesday from 12 to 2, in the auditorium, they really are awesome. I brought back a communications class. A teacher in the past had one. So I developed one with books that were provided by the Rotary Club. And it's just what it sounds like, developing listening and appropriate communication skills. It's been very well received, and I'm really enjoying working with the kids in a different context. I'm teaching that class. I also teach CPR first aid with mannequins that were provided by the Education Foundation in part, and then some also by the school district. Don Seminaro this year has volunteered his time and his facility for a Taekwondo class. PE is a very challenging thing for us to do at Chaparral. Our English teacher, Mr. Paddock, is provides PE some of the time. But the students we walk them down to the Taekwondo studio, and they get a 45-minute lesson, and we walk back, and it's been awesome. We're experimenting this year with project-based learning, and our topic was food chain. How do I make healthy food choices for myself, my community, and my world? And we had our kickoff in the second quarter with all staff members bringing a food item that had special meaning for them or their family that we shared with the students and shared our stories. And we've had some guest speakers from the community. Lori Volk may sound familiar to some of you in the district, from Lori's Lavender Lemonade. Jim Churchill, who's one of the Pixie growers in town. Christine Denny, who's chef at the Oaks. And students were very interested in the speakers, and they enjoyed the kickoff. We're having some fits and starts with projects. So we're still working that part out. But all of these people who've come into our school and helped our students and helped build programs, one of the comments that we get universally is how much they enjoy working with the students at Chaparral. And I would like Alex to share with you from her perspective what having some of these programs does for her in terms of being able to explore things that are interesting to her and how it changes her school day.
All right, I guess it's my turn. Yes, it is. A little background. Hi, I'm Alex.
Hi.
I recently transferred to SHAP from Nordhoff, and I am doing my best to do 2 years of high school in 1 year, so I can hurry up and go to college. The resources provided by SHAP have not only helped me do so, but have made it interesting using the electives. With a little finagling with my teachers, I can take 3 electives a week, which give me, keep me at school until about 2:30, 2:45, depending on the day. And it's great. Music practicum, we each bring an instrument, and
we just kind of jam. Someone starts the bass line, someone jumps on the drums, and then someone brings out a recorder and we just start going at it. It's great. I wish I had recorded some. I would have played some for you. Today.
So what instrument do you play?
I play several instruments. I can read music for violin and viola. I've taught myself piano. I've also taught myself a little bit of guitar, and I'm currently learning erhu.
What's that?
It is a Chinese fiddle.
Well, of course.
When she said each student.
How do you
brings a
spell it?
different
How do you spell
instrument, some students bring more than one.
How do you spell that?
ERHU. Just like
Okay,
it sounds.
like it sounds. Very good.
And I, as you can tell, I like to bring strange instruments when I can, and it gives my peers a little, how do you say, exposure, which is great. It's not something you would get from a regular orchestra or band. The freedom is really great for the students. Next, horticulture. Horticulture is great. We get to grow stuff and then we get to eat it. We currently have an aeroponic system and a hydroponic system. We have not started running our hydroponic system yet because the aeroponic system is got a lot of upkeep. It grows really fast, so you put stuff in it, and then 2-3 classes later, you harvest it and eat it. We also have worm composting that we've started, and we can feed those the leftovers from our aeroponic system, which is great. And then we just put that in the dirt, and then we can grow stuff in the dirt too, like tomatoes or stuff we don't usually grow in the aeroponic system. And Miss Alvarez is just great. She's amazing. She really helps us cultivate our wants. Like, she says, "Oh, what do you want to grow?" And I'm like, "Dragon flowers." That actually hasn't happened yet, but we did put in for a spirulina set, which is a kind of superfood. You just add it to what you're eating and it gives you your needed vitamins and minerals. I am also in graphic production, and we will soon be doing a field trip, which will be great. He's going to be introducing us to a bunch of companies that are selling things in a convention, and he is taking us as his employees, not as students, which gives us the exposure of being able to talk to other people as employees would, not being forced into a room to answer questions like a student. And it's just really great. I love the innovation that Chaparral has brought to the schools. I've never really been in a school like this before, and it's just amazing.
You can see why I chose Alex.
Great job. Do you know what you want to study in college?
I think for now my plan is to do a GE in animals. My career goal is a falconer, which would be pest control mainly, and then maybe some artistry on the side, doing a little music. Any other questions I can answer?
Do you think the food's gonna be used by the hospitality people at any point from the whole?
Oh, I hope so. They haven't come to us to talk about it. We'll soon be having a joint field trip with them as well, which I'm really excited about. A lot of my friends are in hospitality, and just being able to go on a field trip with them sounds great.
Are you going to a hotel? What are you going to, where's the field trip to, do you know?
Poco Farm? Poco Farm.
Okay.
Is the graphics teacher, is that Mr. Swain?
Mr. Reyes.
Mr. Reyes.
Ruben Reyes also comes to us from Ventura County Office of Education Shared Technical Center.
He does.
Great, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for me about the plan?
Wait, there was something, I put an exclamation point by. Oh, and it was the career technical education. I'm so excited about it. It's so wonderful. It's exactly what Chaparral
Yes, I
needed,
hope that we
and-
can expand it, and one of the benefits, because we're an alternative site, the VC Innovates program is very generous with us and very understanding. For comprehensive high schools, there are class size minimums. For alternative sites, there are not. For comprehensive high school, the VC Innovates provides the materials, but they don't pay the teachers, is my understanding, correct? They pay our teachers, so it literally costs us nothing. For comprehensive high schools, very few consumable materials are covered by the grant. For us, they are, because they know we just don't have them. So, you know, there are days when Alex is the only student in the horticulture class. Because there aren't very many students in it right now, and some aren't always there. And when she says she's there until 2:30, 2:45, our regular program goes until noon. So she is choosing to be there, you know, for 2.5, close to 3 hours later, 4 days a week, because there are things that she's interested in doing. And, you know, if we just ask the students, why don't you just stay later and you'll get more work done? How do you think that would go?
I know for me, just grueling every day, doing 2 years at once, not only is it tedious, but my stamina runs out. And being able to look forward to coming to school to do something, not just paperwork, is just great.
So yes, the career technical has been great for us. And we really appreciate all of the members of the community that have, you know, contributed their time, their materials, their expertise. It makes all the difference in the world. I do want to highlight that we had, in my plan, if you looked at the data, we had a peak the last couple years of discipline incidents where we had quite a few suspensions. We had fights last year and the year before. Some groups of kids that had some things that took them a while to work out. Even though there were several fights, it was really the same fight several times. But the atmosphere on campus is much calmer this year. I've heard that from students, I've heard that from staff. Our students, if you come on campus and talk to the students, they're very polite and respectful. And you know, we have had a couple incidents, but they were very limited in scope. So they didn't grow beyond, you know, an incident with a particular student. I could deal with that student and it was over, and it didn't just bleed out into the community.
Well, and I think the things that you have introduced in the 2 years that I've been here, I've come by and had conversations with students who are on their snack break, and when you can do what you're talking about, is find something that sparks an interest in learning, that's the problem for a lot of you, is that you haven't found something that has sparked you. And it's great that, this project-based learning, I know you're still learning, but man, if something comes out of it, let us know. I'd love to come see a presentation or two if the students are comfortable with that. It sounds exciting. And there's nothing more interesting than listening to a student who's excited about something.
Right.
You know.
Becky, why don't you mention the feedback you've gotten from community members who've worked with your programs and our students, and so how they stepped away from that experience?
I think a lot of the community members that have worked with our students that didn't already have experience with Chaparral have been surprised. I think they expected to come into a more chaotic environment. And their experience has been that the students are interested. You know, our students, they're smart, they're interested, they're creative. Their interests are varied. It's not a uniform group of people there. It's a very diverse group in our classrooms, and they're very responsive. So many of the people that come in to volunteer in our classrooms once will ask if they can come back again, or volunteer to come back again, because it's valuable to them too. They enjoy it. They get a lot out of it. And I'm hoping that in expanding our community partnerships, we can continue to work to change some of the stereotypes of being a continuation high school or being an alternative school. It still happens, not as frequently as it did a couple years ago, but it's not uncommon if something is happening behind the arcade that I get a call from a shopkeeper or someone in the public that, hey, your kids are back here and they're doing this, this, and this. And, you know, I go look like, those aren't my kids. They're not my kids, they weren't my kids. So the perception is still out there that if something bad is happening around the arcade area, it must be those Chaparral students. And I can't say that our students never do anything wrong. They're people. But the majority of the time when I get those reports, it's not anybody from Chaparral. It's somebody in close proximity to our school, but it's not somebody from the school. They're aware that they represent the school when they're out there.
I wanted to say thank you for all the adult education programs that you have brought into the Valley. I think those, for the 20-somethings, the kids who are out of high school and still trying to get their footing, those are a great value to this Valley, and I so appreciate that you brought those up here.
And if people have ideas for what adulthood needs, please let me know.
And we talked earlier in the fall about you wanting to hold a prom for students at Chaparral. Is that in the works? Is that something you need help with? Is that something that's wanted?
Is it wanted?
My friend in Wisconsin invited me to go to prom with her, but if we're having a prom, I'll stay.
We haven't figured it out yet, but we're working on it.
Well, if you need help, let me know.
We need help.
Great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Becky.
And Nordoff. And Dave?
Oh, I was gonna say, you guys cannot leave. You can't leave.
We're not leaving.
We had to sit through you either.
We're not leaving, we're gonna open up.
We're out on the stage. All right. Just stop staring at me. Yeah, somebody guard the door.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. I am going to briefly touch on our overall summary for the school, and then I'm going to get into the main portion of our event with our fantastic two guests today, and then maybe we can return that because we want to get Kelly home. Our executive summary largely focuses on what we are doing to try to achieve our goals. And our goals are our WASC goals. Our goals come from the in-depth analysis that we did during our WASC accreditation, and we stayed with those. We tried to be really faithful to those goals for the last 3 years, and they are improve students' critical thinking and reasoning, improve students' overall literacy, primarily their reasoning through writing, increase their engagement with technology, and this last one, helping struggling students with improved intervention programs and strategies. This has been a challenge for us, and it's been a challenge for us for many years. When I started as an assistant principal, we took a look at how we were serving struggling students, and we were okay, we weren't great. And if you take a look at the size of our school, we're just not big enough to have multiple, for lack of a better term, tracks. We're basically a college prep program, so students who struggle in a college prep program need interventions, and that was a weakness of ours. And so about 8 years ago, took a look at our tutoring program, and again, it was good, and it just wasn't great. And that was at the same time where we were in the
the throes of the worst part of the financial crisis. So the question for me was, how can I achieve something cheaply? Where are the coins between the cushions? Where are the under-leveraged resources? And they are our students. We did not use them well. And we decided with the counselors at the time that we need to shift from a tutoring model to a teaching model. And so, Kelly, I'm going to have you come up and do something in a little bit after I introduce Dave Munson. But Kelly is a great example of the fantastic associate teachers that we have. And I know that Javier and Carol refer to them as tutors. We call them associate teachers for a reason. We ask them to teach, not to tutor. And there's an important difference there, and I can talk about that a little bit later. But we want to give them the authority, the responsibility, the power to teach. And we wanted to give them that title because we felt like that's what we were missing. They were able to do things that we ourselves can't do. There's a lot of really powerful research that says that students learn better, especially struggling students, learn better from their peers than from adults. And so that's how we launched into the associate teaching program and transitioned away from sort of a vague tutoring model that we had. So as assistant principal 8 years ago, developed that program with the counselors, pass it off to Kim Hoy, and then the baton has been passed to Dave Munson, and I'll have him introduce our fantastic master teacher and associate teacher, Kelly.
Thank you. As you know me, this is my first year in a new position as dealing with curriculum instruction. I'm very thankful that I'm not knee-deep in discipline on a regular basis. But what I didn't know was some of the other rewards that are going to come from the position change, and this is one of them. I've been pleasantly surprised at the quality of students that we have in this program. And so I'm going to embarrass you, Kelly, just a moment here, but in a good way. I just took a look at his first semester grades. This is a guy who's in 6 AP classes, and he earned a 4.9 GPA, all A's in all AP classes. And I think what kept him from becoming a 5.0 mark was actually our program, which isn't weighted like an AP program, but he did get a grade and he did get credit for being an associate teacher. So I know that Mr. Ramirez talked about how girls are surpassing boys, but I have the exception to that right here, and it's Kelly Jorgensen. But before we bring up our cleanup hitter, I want to introduce Natalie Hay. She is our science department chair. She's our chemistry and our physics teacher, and I want to engage her in a little conversation. I'm going to ask her 3 questions about the associate teaching program. If you'd like to come up, sure. So, Natalie and Kelly work together, so we brought a really dynamic pair to you. So, Ms. Hay, how do you guys determine what lessons you're going to reteach for that particular week?
Well, in the context of chemistry and the way our schedule is, so we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of our regular days, and so by Wednesday, and part of what makes the teamwork here easier is now Kelly's in my AP Physics class this year, so I see him right after snack. And so by Wednesday at snack, I really know kind of the 6 students that I have in associate teaching, perhaps where they're struggling. And the most common thing with chemistry is looking at the math. And so when I look at what students have put in there, I'm looking at who might need an extra hour a day to feel confident in these concepts, so conceptual approach to then the mathematics skills, applying the understanding of the concept and representing it numerically. So when I look at associate teaching, I see that often as my number one thing. So it could be different in another subject, but it comes to what have we done those 3 days? Where are my 4 to 6 kids? He is working with 5 right now, I believe.
So as a master teacher and associate teacher, can you share with the board the process for putting together the lesson for that particular week?
So a lot of times I will give exactly the notes, the work. I will plan ahead for what lab we're doing that week. And so Kelly has all of the resources that the students have. And I have given him, and over time have seen him be successful and can trust that he can actually even elaborate on, in a lot of cases, what they might be having trouble with or a better way to explain it. And so given what they already have, there is some freedom that comes with the title of teacher that is to come up with a better way of explaining it and see what you can do with it from there.
And the last question is, what have some of his students said about him?
Well, probably a part of what brings us here today is that this is the year that sticks out to me, having students in the associate teaching program, because they have come to me and thanked me for putting them in that program. It's an hour commitment of their day that once they're in, they can't get out. And so I think that speaks to Kelly's ability to reach out to them, and that's a big deal to have an associate teacher that the students feel works well with them, helps them out, and want to be there and feel successful.
All right. Thank you, Ms. A.
Yeah.
So now our key speaker here, I'm going to bring up Kelly Jurgensen. We're going to grab a whiteboard, and he's going to teach you a lesson.
Hi. Hi. Welcome.
As we set this up, I want to make sure you guys know that this is not, he didn't just dress up for you. This is how he dresses every single day. So,
Now, that
talk-
location is not gonna be good for our camera.
by me.
Can he maybe do it on this one? And
If
we
you
can
guys
all
would like
just
to turn around, sure, that
Sure,
might
we
work
can do
out.
it, yeah.
All right.
Is that all right?
Markers and more erasers than you need.
What,
Yeah.
Okay.
so what Kelly is going to do is going to model
Yes.
an example. So you are these struggling students in chemistry.
That won't be
You
good.
have gone to your first, that may not be a stretch for.
I have a lot of experience with that.
And
Uh,
there's 1 hour a week?
Well, 2 half-hour sessions.
2 half hours.
So you have just spent your first 3 days in chemistry, brand new year. And this is the first session. You're already confused about what chemistry is. You have no idea. And Ms. Hay has noticed your confusion in the first 3 days, and she has signed you up for associate teaching. So Kelly has been trained by Dave Munson and our counselors. He has been selectively, he's competitive selection, so many people applied for this position, and he's the one who got it, so we do have cuts. We try to make it the most prestigious thing, extracurricular, academically, that a student can do. And so this is the opening session of associate teaching.
Well, after all those words, I hope I don't disappoint you. Hi, I'm C. Kelly. I know you're probably confused after your first 3 days of chemistry. It's a hard subject, I get it. I went there, I was there last year. Chemistry, I'm going to ask you guys a question here. This is not a great marker, but it's fine. So, chemistry. How many of you guys can write down for me your definition of chemistry right now? Could you do that for me? Or not, that's fine. And when you think of chemistry, I want to know, how many of you think of the word atom or matter or substance or just stuff? How many of you think of that word?
Last one.
The last one? Stuff?
Stuff.
That's good. We're on the right track. Okay, so
I hate chemicals.
chemicals. That's part of stuff, yeah. So when I think of chemistry, I think of one of the most important parts of chemistry is knowing this word, the word of atoms. So what are atoms? I know it's kind of hard to imagine, but bear with me here. All around us, everywhere, there's these tiny little specks. Like floating in the sky, you're sitting on them right now, you're made of them. Like everything we see is part of these little specks, and these are called atoms. But they're a lot smaller than this, right? We don't see them because they're so small. And so everything that we have around us, everything in the world, is made of these little atoms, these little specks. And these atoms come and group in 3 different forms. So we can have our gas, we can have our liquid. Sorry about my handwriting, by the way. My students are pretty used to this, but I suppose you wouldn't be. And our solids.
Yeah,
So,
red, there you go, red. There you go.
oh, thank you. So, our gases, our liquids, and our solids. If we were to zoom in a lot and look at these so that we can see these little atoms inside each one of them, we'd see gases are very spread out and like sporadic, and they're sort of just flying around, not really having a basic structure or following any real, they're not listening to each other. They're doing their own thing. However, liquids, they're kind of funny because they're kind of a mix. They're spread out, but they stay together. And they're a little bit closer, they're more dense, than our gases, so that's why we can see them better, and why we can feel them better, and why we know they're there more easily. And then we have our solids, like your chair, or like you as a person even. Our solids are very rigid structure, and they're very organized and very close together. And that's why, when they're so close together, when you push on a solid, it pushes back. Because it's so strong, it's so rigid. And so that's what makes our solids, liquids, and gases different, is because of when we interact with them, they interact back differently. I'm able to push this gas around. And if I had water, I could push the water, and it would push back a little bit, but not as much as if I tried to push this board. I can't, mold this board any way I wanted because it's a solid. So I want to ask you as a question, how would one get from one to the other? Because we have water vapor, we have water, and we have ice. It's all H2O, right? It's all water, but it's in 3 different forms. So how do we get from one to another? Does anyone have an idea?
How about temperature?
Temperature, that's great, that's perfect. So,
I learned one thing.
that's great. So, temperature is a huge important part. We'll go on with this idea of water. So, water, right, at normal temperature, at our room temperature, it's a liquid. When we heat it up, what happens?
Turns to steam.
It turns to steam, water vapor, right? Because we make these little atoms, we make them start moving really fast and a lot. So that to the point where they all want to separate from each other because they're so hot. They have to get away from each other. So they turn into a gas. They spread out and fly around in the air. What happens if we cool water? If we make it colder? Solid, right? All of them calm down and need to stay together. They don't have as much energy, so they have to stay in the same structure to stay together. And they get closer and more dense, and that's why they become a solid. So, let's go back to this idea of chemistry. Now that we've branched out a little bit, what would you say chemistry is now? Would you agree with me that it's the study of stuff? Because this is everything. This is all we have. It's the study of stuff. So I want you, by the end of the day, to remember this word, matter. Matter. Matter matters. It's important. It's everything that we have. And matter is atoms. So, atoms matter. And that's the basics of chemistry. Thank you.
Where's Natalie? Where's Natalie?
That seems a lot easier than the chemistry aspect.
Days 1, 2, 3.
Oh, yeah. Is there still a periodic table?
There's still a
Oh, good.
It's the second one.
It's getting longer though.
Oh, are there more? Oh.
These.
I didn't know. I guess they're probably.
So Kelly, a couple questions for you now. You can stay center stage.
Sure.
And as engaging and excellent as he is, I want you to know that we have many people like Sekeli. We've had many people like Sekeli over the course of the history of the program. And so what we have done is we have shared with them the responsibility of teaching. We have so many struggling students that even though Natalie spends a great deal of time after school, at lunch, in her classroom, there's no way that she can service all of them, nor can she reach all of them in the same way that Sekeli can. So we have asked our best and brightest to be adults along with us. And isn't that what high school is? It's the transitioning to adulthood. So we're not giving them sort of a play, pretend job that we ourselves could do and that we're just letting them practice and do that themselves. We're saying to our finest, there's something that we need help with. We cannot do this. We cannot help these students. We need your help. So be our colleagues. Be our colleagues. And as you can tell, they're incredible. They're fantastic. Once given the responsibility, the training, and the trust, they rise to the occasion. So, Sekeli, a couple thoughts from you about what you have learned as a result of doing this. This is your second year, right?
My second year, yeah.
Second year. So this is just for upperclassmen. We reserve for juniors and seniors. Tell us what your thoughts have been. How were you at the start? What have you gotten better with? What have you discovered about yourself, about your skills, your talents?
Well, one thing I want to point out is that it's not just the struggling students who are getting help from this. My junior year, the beginning of my junior year, that's when you start thinking about college and what you want to do with the rest of your life. And I had no clue. You know, I was like, oh, I'll be an engineer because my dad was an engineer. Or I'll be a doctor because my mom was a doctor. And when I decided to try out for this associate teaching program, it completely changed like everything. And now I want to be a teacher. And I'm probably going to stick with that for the rest of my life. So it's had not just an impact on my students who have, they've come up to me. My students from the last year have come up to me and they've said, thank you so much. I'm in Math 3 now because I was able to pass the class because of you, and I thank you so much for that. And that's, I don't have a better experience from high school than those feelings when they said that to me. So.
You know what, you might not believe me. I'm being totally honest when I tell you you and I have not had that conversation. I did not know that. So that wasn't planned. Our secret subversive reason for doing this, outside of everything I've already talked about, is to try to attract more people into the profession. One of the things I'm really passionate about is teacher education. There is a looming teacher shortage. The number of students that are enrolling in teacher education programs is way down. The state just released a report. The number of fully credentialed teachers are way down. The number of emergency credentials are way up. The number of out-of-state credentials are way up. If we do not attract great people like Sekeli to the profession, we will not replace ourselves, and we will have done a disservice to the profession. We talked a little bit about CTE programs. Becky, one of my dreams, I have a dream, that there is a CTE program, a pathway for teaching. There is one. We don't have it right now. There's not one in the county, to my knowledge, because nobody has, from what I've heard from Tiffany Morse, who runs the CTE program, nobody's come up with a great vision for it. I'm in the process of writing my best possible email to her to describe what it is that we do at the junior high and at the high school to develop a teaching pathway, a real career tech ed teaching pathway. And so it warms my heart beyond anything I could possibly say to hear you say that, because again, that is part of our goal. We have many teachers at Nordhoff High School who have returned to us, and I would hire you in an instant. Yeah, I hope that you return to us.
And I'd like to add too that of the 26 associate teachers that we have, 12 of them are guys, and that's the largest group that we've ever had. And yes, we're breaking down.
I think the junior high is a little different.
Well, what I'd also like to add is that they are great, positive role models for the rest of our guys on campus too. So Sekeli is just one of several great associate teachers that we have in a pack of just fantastic associate teachers in general.
There's, if you're familiar with education research at all, a lot of descriptions about differences in academic performance according to race. Many students describe their reluctance to act white. And that was a long history of why many students that come from inner city, students of color, were reluctant to walk with their books to school or to raise their hand in class because they didn't want to appear. They would lose a sense of cultural identity because their identity was shaped by that. And a lot of recent evidence has come out about acting girl. So why don't boys engage in intellectual activities and value academics? It's because that's what girls do. Boys don't want to act girl. And one of the main goals I've had is to try to elevate the valuing of intellectualism, the value of academic work, particularly for boys. And I cannot do that myself. But people like Sekeli, people like the fantastic cohort, the males in particular, are doing that for us. So like Dave said, it's a tremendous cultural impact that these guys are having.
And I just wanted to add, in the context of when I didn't know as well that you were interested in teaching, but looking at the peer-to-peer interactions as an associate teacher working with them, is you also have with the academics this job essentially to inspire, and I think that's something that Sekeli has captured. He's inspired the group that he's working with, and they enjoy working together, and so there's a practice in that, not only for our associate teachers, but for the students that are in the role where they're getting help. And so I think it speaks to the relational aspect of Nordhoff that as I'm listening here to Greg talk and I'm looking at the board about one of our goals, knowing that helping struggling students was connected to this conversation and on our staff with relationships and other ways to strengthen and acknowledge those as a way to help our struggling students, that the associate teaching program is actually nourishing and feeding an aspect of that. So.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just gonna say that I've already mentioned he's got a heavy academic load, so I'd like to let him go, but I want to give you an opportunity to ask some questions before we let him go.
My only question for you, Sue Kelly, is it a paying gig and are you guys starting a union? Because it sounds like you guys
It doesn't need to pay. It doesn't.
No, we do something very special for them. We tell first of all, it's competitive. We don't take everybody, but we have a very special part of our school profile. Our school profile is sent to all the colleges, so usually selections committee sit down with your school profile. Okay, this person's from Nordhoff, and they look at what that student has taken, what they're doing in relation to what that school offers, the median grades, all those sorts of things. And on front and center is basically this. If you see on that transcript that that student has associate teaching on their transcript, you want that person. That's the kind of person that's going to make a contribution to the cohort, the university. That's the kind of student you want. We also write them special letters of recommendation. We do some other things for them throughout the year. But those are a few of the ways that we honor them and pay them.
So Kelly, do you have the same group every week, or is it changed depending on the topic?
It depends on the master teacher. I've had the same group all year this year and a different group, the same group throughout last year as well. So it depends on whether the teacher is willing to change up the group or if they think that the program is so important to them that they need to stay in it to keep their grades. So I've seen both.
And do you have multiple associate teachers or just C. Kelly?
So just the one, because of my number of class periods. So for chemistry P, I have one group that Kelly works with. For chemistry intro, which would be a totally different set of curriculum. So when I taught that previously, we now have a different teacher teaching the intro course, but I had two for chemistry, but it was different curriculum. So I had to keep it separate.
So we tend to have, the majority of our associate teachers tend to be math and science teachers. We have some foreign language teachers as well, but it's those are the areas that we find that we've had most success. So I guess the question for you would be, that's incredible, it's amazing, it's inspiring. He wants to become a teacher, but does it work for those students?
Well, we did a analysis comparing first quarter grades to second quarter grades, and we have 83 students in the library reteaching program, and that's what we studied, and we found that 49% of them increased their grades from from first quarter to second quarter.
And we don't start until the end of first quarter. So first quarter they are associate teacher-less, and then we use those first quarter grades to determine who goes in with the teacher. So then we have a real clean comparison between how do those kids do without an associate teacher versus how do they do second quarter with an associate teacher. So half of them improve. Some significantly.
Yeah, and 25% increased by a full grade and 15% increased their letter grade in that particular subject matter they're getting retaught in by 2 letter grades or more. So we feel the program is a success, and a lot has to do with these two people, as an example.
I can speak to what doesn't show up in the grade, but their class participation is actually, I think, definitely one of the things that indicates to me whether or not the associate teaching is serving a productive purpose for them.
So first quarter, how would you describe those students first quarter versus second quarter? Were they were less engaged, less likely to raise their hand, less likely to?
Yeah, I mean, it's an intimidating subject matter. I think for a large portion of the students that come in for the first time, they're expecting to be blown out of the water, and one response to that is to hide and to kind of back away from asking questions or being involved in the lab group, etc. And so that's one thing I look for in the beginning, not just test scores, not just performance on quizzes and assignments and other things like that. And I can say definitely for 3 specifically stick out as, oh wow, they went from feeling like I can never get this to I'm going to try this and I'm going to ask questions and I can bring something to the table with this extra hour a week and 2.5 hours.
Well said. Kelly, thank you very much. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
And as Kelly leaves, just so you know, a little update on him. He is applying for a Rotary Study Abroad exchange program next year. He is starting to learn Japanese because he wants to go to Japan for a little bit, and then I just learned this. Eventually, he becomes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. our hope is that you would be willing and able to come Thursday or Friday sometime, 9:30 to 10, to watch it happen. Because watching that, seeing the students, and then watching 20 other stations in the library where it's all happening together, it's this cacophony of noise and chaos. And it actually, we've had several schools come observe and some adopt our program, which has been very flattering. And they at first have said, gosh, it's so distracting. There's so many things going on in here. But when you look at the students, they're all very focused and engaged with their associate teacher. And I think the reason why we don't separate them out, first of all, it would be difficult supervision-wise, but it's actually the energy of having them all together, them seeing all these other associate teachers at other tables. I think that there's something very dynamic and energizing and inspiring about it all being in one place. So you could come, make one stop, and you could see it all from 9:30 to 10, Thursday, Friday. So invite all of you to come.
How does it work that they have that period open, 9:30 to 10?
We have that modified block schedule, so on Thursday and Fridays, we have a seminar period after the first period of the day, so, and that's school-wide. And during that time, if you're not involved in associate teaching, that's the opportunity for students to go get extra help from teachers, retake tests, things of that nature. So we just have that seminar time built into our schedule, and so that's where the teaching takes place.
One thing that really occurs to me is as we talk about Measure J and the potential of redoing the library, we'd love your input, because it's being used so differently than the conventional library now, that you could really imagine doing something really particular that also would enhance things like your associate teaching.
Yeah, the furniture, space, all of that matters. All of that contributes to the overall environment and mood and atmosphere and effectiveness, so absolutely. We made some
Starbucks in the corner.
I mean, even the difference between a simple difference, we used to have rectangular tables, and we got rid of those and had circle tables, and instead of sort of traditional plastic chairs, our furniture angel gave us all these nice fancy chairs, so the students are sitting in these very comfortable chairs around circle tables, and those things make a difference. So.
Is the library leaking with the rain? It hasn't rained for years, so.
There are some places that are leaking. Library has not been on the list, so.
Matilla is, I know that, I was there on Saturday.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the gym, but what the heck.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions about the associate teaching program or single school plan?
I would completely encourage you to stay on Tiffany Morris on this for the VC Innovates, because I think you're absolutely on track. The only thing that I would say is that I read recently that Channel Islands has been working on a 4-year credential program, and I thought they had just done an articulation agreement with VUSD. And it sounds to me like it's right in line with what you guys are doing. So I'm hoping
It's a
that we can-
4-year program instead of 5.
Yeah.
That was in the paper.
Yeah. Well, certainly, quick little aside comment. Italian Catholic mother, forced to go to Catholic school my life, and I remember being very nervous because we were there 4th graders, and the priest got up and said, look, this school has not produced a single priest. And he was sort of looking at us like, who's going to be? And I'm like, oh my gosh, not me, And that was the metric of success, whether or not this school had produced any priest. So I obviously did not go that direction. But nonetheless, I think about that as a metric of success for our school. Can we use this program to attract fantastic people, 4.9 students like Sekeli? Can we reproduce ourselves with our own students? Will they want to come back and teach? And even better, will they want to come back to Nordhoff and teach? Because again, we have some fantastic Nordhoff graduates who have returned to us. So that's my hope. I think we're getting there. We're getting there. So.
Can I ask you a couple
please.
questions about something else
Yep,
on here?
absolutely.
First of all, I love this overview. We're existing programs that we're continuing, new programs, and it was really helpful to remind myself of what we had done last year and what was, so that
Well, I appreciate that, because this was a leap of faith for me, the bullets. I'm not usually a bullet list guy, more of a narrative guy, but
So on the new and proposed initiatives, you had the 3rd and 4th one there, that potential for, or the possibility
Yes.
of, and it's, we're halfway through the year. So at what point do you?
Right now, we've had those conversations, we've started those conversations in late fall, because we start building the master schedule for next year. We register Matilah students in February. We register our own students in late February. We go through all of the process of creating the spreadsheets for classes and building the master schedule in March and April. So that's happening right now, and Dave and I have been in several conversations about how we might want to rethink Math Lab, whether or not a leveled class whereby students who struggle, we keep them together, homogeneous grouping. There's a lot of debate about whether or not that's the right call. We're trying to figure out a way. Obviously, we have an issue with our low socioeconomic disadvantaged students and their performance, particularly in math. So we are trying to think of ways to address that in the master schedule, in addition to other ways, like Andy and I have been in conversations about trying to figure out grant funds for funding additional hours after school for the library, enhancing what we do with our after-school math tutoring, those sorts of things. So now is the time. And Natalie here, this is perfect because all three of us have been in a lot of conversations about what to do with next generation science standards. I know that Ventura Unified has just recently come up with their flow for how they're going to address next generation science standards. And we've spent some time and money having the Ventura County Office of Education expert come and work with our department to try and work for that. There's a couple different ways we can go, so I think perhaps in the next month or two we may come back and want to talk our science curriculum with you. But too early to tell right now. Need a little more time.
Did I hear you say, I was gonna ask you about the extended library hours. That is not happening right now. You're looking for funding to do that.
No, we have the possibility of using the College Readiness Block Grant. And maybe, Andy, you could help me out with the process for freeing up those funds or having the board approve those funds. But that's one of the plans to use that money, which is designed to increase students' A to G completion, increase their direct to four-year college matriculation. So DNF rates, if a student gets a D or an F, they're automatically not A to G. So we're trying to look at those problems as connected, and our teachers and our students repeatedly tell us that the number one reason why they fail or students fail is that homework turn-in rates. Either they don't have a great place to do homework at home, or it's, they go home, they thought they understood and now they don't, and their parents aren't able to help them. So having a place at school that is staffed with some teachers to help, I think, is really key. So we're hoping that by the end of the month we have that up and running, however we fund it.
See, and when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, great for student athletes who are stuck after school anyway and need a place to do their homework and aren't waiting until 10 o'clock at night to do it or whenever they get home.
Right.
But also the lack of busing that we don't have at NORDOC. If parents are planning to pick their kids up but don't get off until a certain time, if they had a place to stay at school and do homework, it would perhaps for some families alleviate the busing issue.
Agreed. It's been a gap that has gone unaddressed for us, so it's time that we look into it. So
It would be interesting to see if it could be staffed also by some additional associate teachers.
right, these associate teachers though are very hard to get a hold of after school. That's
No, I mean, like a whole new generation. I mean, right, you said you get a lot of applicants, but you don't take everybody, so maybe.
Yeah, you know, we had a plan to have about 5 or 6 of them come, and they're all involved in the musical or sports, so using them during seminar works, trying to get them after school is really, really tricky, because they're so engaged and so.
But I think there's a possibility, because we have so many that we can't take them all, there may be that option to see if there's any that have that flexibility in their schedule. And I think it may be more on a rotating basis, because some are available first semester, you know, before the musical comes along. We've had some that, we have a couple after-school math tutors that can no longer be there second semester. One is a spring sport athlete, and another one just got a significant role in the musical. And so we are rotating bodies in the after-school math tutoring. So I could see something with the associate teaching, if we can just elaborate on our application to see if there was any availability for people to be after school. And would love to have the right adults in the library too. We just don't want to open up the library per se, but we really feel we'll get more bang for the buck if we have somebody in there. We did that last year with Greg Lapine, and if you know who he is just a very charismatic person, and so that will attract the kids who just want to be around him. And then, he has that nice balance between making kids feel comfortable but still pushing them to be serious about their work. So we're reaching out to those
And you let him not
teachers.
do it anymore? You can't
Well, we're trying to, he's
Slowly
part-time now,
retiring.
he's slowly retiring, but we're going to try and get everything we can out of him with what we have.
I put out a calendar to our staff and said, theoretically, if we can get this after-school library time open Monday through Thursday, how many of you would be willing to staff at for pay as a part of this grant? And the calendar is filled up. So we have interested, willing staff members to stay after. I mean, there's math teachers, English teachers, everyone on a rotating basis. We could post that for students so they could see when their teacher's going to be, so to make sure that they go during that time. There's a lot of things that we could do there with this grant.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, we are collectively asking then to approve the single plan for student achievement for Matilaha, Chaparral, and Nordoff High School. Do I have a motion?
We'll move to approve.
Second.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. I'm going to suggest a 10-minute break before we get on to the audit report. Does that sound good? Or maybe just 8 minutes till 10 till? Give everyone time to just stretch. So we'll start back at 7:50. Thank you. Okay, we're back. We're gonna dive into 7.3.1, which is our annual audit financial report. Andy, I'll let you take charge.
Sure. So just to give context, I know everyone here remembers, we switched law firms about this time last year, went through a very thorough RFP process and interview, selected one of the most well-regarded audit firms in the state, and one that I was quite familiar with when I was at Santa Barbara County Education Office. And we did that in part to have a fresh set of eyes look at our books, and really knowing that this was a firm that was going to go to a greater level of depth than maybe we had experienced in other years. And so the feedback I received from Laura and Patty was that that was exactly what we ended up getting. That we did have an audit firm that during their 3 visits was very thorough, both in their interviews and discussions with our staff, as well as review of actual documents and test documents. So I'm very pleased with that. I'm very pleased with the outcome, which Kelly will discuss here soon. And just in the files of Small World Education, interesting that after we selected VTD, I'm not sure exactly the timeline of when you transitioned back, but Kelly was a colleague of mine at the county office, extremely well-respected colleague from, was formerly the controller at Santa Barbara County, and then was promoted into the administrator level, overseeing all of internal business for the county operations up there, the equivalent of VCOE. So excited to be able to work with her now in this new role, and so with that, I'll allow Kelly to give a little overview on the audit.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me. And I left Santa Barbara County in July.
Okay.
And returned to BTD. I'd worked for BTD for several years before going to the county office, and just realized that I enjoyed this work more than what I was doing at the county office. That's why I made the change. So I'll just point out a few things about your audit report, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I have also your building fund Measure J audit and the charter school audit, if you have any questions about this. The first thing I'd like to point out in your regular financial statement audit is page 90. And this page is the summary of auditors' results. And this, it is exactly as it's titled. It summarizes the results of the audit. So the first, at the top, it says that our opinion on your financial statements was unmodified. We didn't identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Then we move on to the federal awards and our report on federal compliance. Also, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, and our opinion on your federal awards, and internal control over federal awards was unmodified. We didn't have any findings related to federal awards. We did test your special education cluster for compliance this year. Then we move on to state awards, and our opinion on state grants and state funding was also unmodified.
Can you just, what is the dollar threshold used to distinguish between type A and type B programs? What is that?
The federal government says that if a program is below $750,000, it's considered a type B program. If it's above $750,000 for an entity of your size, then that's a type A program. And the type A programs were required to test those every 3 years. So every third year, we would have to test special ed. Another year, it might be Title I or another program that you have that's over $750,000.
It looks pretty clean.
It was a busy audit. As Andy says, the first year is always a lot of work because we're required to document all of your systems and everything that you're doing. Subsequent years aren't quite as much work for the auditor, not quite as much work for the staff. So, let's see. It was a lot of work. Yeah, I know. I wasn't here for the first part of the audit because I was still working for Santa Barbara County, so I came in just at the end. Then I'd like you to turn to page 86. That's our report on state compliance. And on page 87, it actually lists all of the state programs and state revenue sources that we're required to look at if you receive that funding. So you see the whole list, and if it says no, see below, then it explains why we didn't test that. Then if you turn to page 75, this is where we show trends. So we show the year of audit and the 2 prior years, as well as the budget year. And here we note that in 2 of the past 3 years, you have had deficit spending. A year of audit, no deficit spending, a nice surplus. And then you're also budgeting a surplus for 16-17. This is the only place in the audit work that shows the 16-17 information. And then the last item I'd like to point out is our opinion, which is on page 2. As I mentioned before, it is unmodified, which is good. That means we didn't have to say except for anything. And this also outlines management's responsibility as well as the audit responsibility. And do you have any questions?
I really appreciated the comment letter starting on 98. I think that's very thorough, a lot more thorough than we've received in years past on suggestions, comments, that sort of thing. I mean, the whole packet is more extensive than we've received in years past. And it sounds like you really did do a thorough job, which I think we needed, and it's great. Puts us on good footing to move forward there. I'm always curious because you're going around to a lot of school districts, just more, anecdotally, how do you think we're doing? Are there things we need to watch out for? What could we do better? That sort of thing.
Well, I know that you've made a lot of changes, especially in the business office recently, because of the fraud that you had in the past. So I think that's a great great progress in that area, and I know that you've really tightened up your controls and you've looked at all of your systems. I think that's a really good step.
Do you feel, Andy, that these, in terms of these recommendations, is there a way to implement them or a majority of them, or?
Yeah, yes, and I'll supplement that with, in addition to what you see in that letter, at the end of each time that VTD is on site with us, they do an exit interview either with myself, with Laura, with Patty, and often we'll also have a document associated with that that will give recommendations throughout the process. And so we do act on some of those immediately. In fact, what was really nice when they came, it was right around July-ish, correct? Your second of the 3 visits? Where before we'd actually fully close the books, they were able to make a few recommendations on, we do not believe this would be an appropriate expenditure in this location, it should be moved to another, fund, that sort of thing. So we certainly, appreciate being able to receive some of that guidance throughout the process and take action on it immediately. Certainly on the payroll side of things, we are working on, a number of improvements, and we're very fortunate that Patty spent a decade plus at Oxnard Elementary in payroll, and so I know that that's one of her priority areas for her new role as director.
So to tie into what I think Thane was sort of asking, this on page 90, that auditee qualified as a low risk, you said yes, and that's a good thing. That sounds
Yes.
very good,
Yes,
right?
that's good.
And that's a statement of just the how the business office operates, or the budget?
In this case, it's partly budget, so if you had a going concern issue, you wouldn't be low risk. Low risk also relates to the fact that you haven't had any findings for your federal programs for the last few years. And low risk is important from the audit perspective because we're required to test 25%, our programs represent 25% of your total federal expenditures. If you're low risk, if you're not low risk, it's 50%. So that means, an additional program we would have had to select, or maybe 2. And more work for everyone, the staff, for us. So, yeah, it's nice when you're low risk.
I know there's a reference in here to the, at page 94, you talk about the accounting department investigation. And then you say, current status, implementation in progress, see current management letter comments. I didn't see any comments about this in the current year management letter.
We didn't make, so this, page 94 is prior year findings, so we just.
Okay, so that would have been referencing the then current management letter?
No, we feel that the comments we put in the management letter, which begins on page 98, are items that are small weaknesses in internal control that could lead to fraud if they weren't fixed. Not to say that they would, but just, it's a possibility, and that's why we put these in. We just feel like there are issues with internal control that could be tightened.
What I'm getting is, I read the comment as being, look at the management letter, you'll see us talking more about this theft issue. No, you're just saying generally, for suggestions and so forth, go to the management letter. Got it.
Yes, we didn't have anything to do with the fraud investigation or any work specific to the fraud.
And Andy, I just wonder if, it's a relatively limited number of suggestions. Is that something that, you could respond to in some way so that we as a board could get, here's the recommendation, here's why I'm either adopting or not adopting the suggestion?
Absolutely.
That would be simple.
Yeah, I'll provide a written response.
Any other questions? questions about the financial statement audit? Would you like me to say a little bit about the Measure J audit, or just answer questions?
No, I like what you did. If you could guide us through Measure J as well.
Measure J, of course, is much simpler. So on page 2 is our report, also unmodified, which is good. So this report, this packet has both the independent auditor's report on the financial statements, and it also has the performance report, which is the second part of the book. Also on page 2, but towards the back. Sadly, sorry about that page numbering. I didn't really notice that until tonight. That it's like we have two separate
Two-page
reports in one book. So the report on performance just notes that we did test a certain number of expenditures, and we did not find any questions on the expenditures.
And as of then, in June of 2016, it looks like we'd only spent about $68,000.
Yes,
It's pretty limited.
very limited. Yes.
And Andy, in terms of, you know, I know in auditing, you know, they're testing little pieces, they're not gonna test everything. Did you find, I know there's, I think, an accountant on the COC. Did she look into things any differently than the COC in general, or no?
No, so our most recent COC meeting in December, we reviewed the expenditures to date as of November 30th. Our next meeting, which COC is in the chair of COC is in possession of this report and will be disseminating it soon if he hasn't already. It'll be presented to the COC at the next meeting formally, and then we will be reviewing, again, the same period of time for the 15-16 fiscal year, the expenditures in greater depth, and then that will be what they build their report on, which comes to you in the May-June timeframe. So at this point, they have not, beyond that single meeting, had a thorough review of expenditures.
Andy, just pick up on what Kevin said, though, the 68,000, by the time all the dollars were accounted for, but in the work in the summer, related to the work in the summer,
Mhm.
we're talking about 10 times this, yes?
Correct.
Right, so it was 700,000 or so was the total bill, if you will, right, for the painting work, et cetera.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions about the Measure J audit and performance audit? I also have the.
If you think there are questions we should ask,
No,
let us know.
in the next round, I think, you know, there may be more, it will be a more interesting report because of the increased expenditures for the 16-17 fiscal year. Now, this is kind of, it's kind of silly almost when you think a whole report just for not even $70,000. But it's required, so here it is. And I also have Valley Oak Charter Schools audit report with me if you have any questions on that.
And just a reminder on process for this one, typically Laura would be the one who would actually present the audit to the VOC board. This year it will be Patty and I together presenting at the next board meeting the findings of that report.
I didn't notice anything in here that you guys were concerned about. Is that a fair?
That's a fair statement.
I didn't even highlight anything.
When Jane's not concerned, that's even better.
We can all go home.
This one I can get through.
Thank you. I was part of the interview committee, and that was a really interesting experience. And we were impressed with your firm, and we're hoping for good things, and it looks like it turned out. That's kind of the report that I'm hearing.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
I agree. I think that it has been obviously more in-depth, and I think that's important.
Very important,
It'd be great if you could just find some money for us.
Well, we do pride ourselves on providing service to the client, so if Patty has any questions, she knows she can email me or call, and we try to find answers. We know people at the state, I have peers in other, who work with other districts, so we have a lot of resources, and we're very happy to answer questions and help out and maybe provide a resource that Patty can look something up or
No,
refer to.
And I can really attest that they're really speedy at replying to any questions that we have, so that's always very, very nice.
And
Thanks.
it was a pleasure working with the staff in the business office and out of the sites as well. So thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gee, that was easier than I thought. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
7.4.1, reminder about the January 17th special budget meeting study session. I think we wanted to talk a little bit about how we want that meeting to run, and hopefully people who have seen on the PTO notices, and it'll be in the paper on Friday and on Facebook, that we'll get some people here who are interested in sharing with us their thoughts. I did ask Andy, I'd like you to start the meeting with sort of a little education about the differences between restricted and unrestricted funds, and maybe a brief description of ADA and how that works.
Of course.
But other than that, I don't know if we've discussed what we hope to happen, if we want to be at this type of a table, if we're going to intermingle more like the sixth grade study committee group. Does anyone have?
I think the difference between this and the sixth grade study committee is that for this to be effective, I think we have to be all together, we'll all be focused on the same speaker at the same time. I think if we broke into smaller groups to begin with, I can't imagine who would run those groups. I mean, I could run a group and I could just make it up. And Andy's group would be the only one with information. Everyone's like, can I be in Andy's group? No! It's a $2.5 million budget. 25, sorry. But I think, well, I guess it will be a work in progress, right, somewhat, because I think it will be dictated a lot by the desire of the people who are not us, who come. But, I certainly think being prepared to talk about these categories you talked about, I think there'll be a lot of interest in anything discretionary, right? Anything where we don't necessarily have to spend money for a certain thing, but we spend it because that's how we do it and that's our choice. I think that will be of particular interest. And then on the flip side with the revenue as well, areas where we could imagine some delta between where we are and where we might be. But I don't know, I would certainly subordinate my desires for, if a bunch of people were much more interested in something else, I would say great. Because for me, this is about beginning the process of really engaging our constituents in these questions of how we spend money in this district.
And I would hope, there is the possibility that 3 or 4 people will come.
Yeah.
So we should come prepared with our own thoughts.
Angie will be there.
Angie.
That's two.
Awesome. I'll make awesome.
And actually that made me think of, when you talked about discretionary funds, so I know, at Mantillo how they talked about, so now we've opened the library, right, after school. So where do those funds come from in the middle of the year when we add something? How does that, if we had a budget, I know why we have interim budgets, to sort of say, oh, we've changed something, or a teacher left and the person who took her spot is at a different step, and those items, but it might be interesting to talk a little bit about flexibility, because obviously, if a bus breaks down, you can't put everything in the budget and stick exactly to that number. So how do you provide that flexibility?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Sure.
I can, it has nothing to do with the budget, but we can actually hear rain outside.
Isn't that fantastic?
You hear that? Like you guys, all of you went, look, that's
great.
great.
You know why it is?
Get
It's
it.
because I didn't drive. I walked, so you guys can all thank me for that.
Thank you.
Please walk.
I just, you have to note that in Southern California. Sorry.
If you need a ride,
So I'll certainly do anything that's requested of me, whatever direction you'd like to see the meeting go or meetings. I was thinking conceptually that before we can get into philosophical discussions around even the question of what is discretionary, because I think we've talked about that already. You know, one viewpoint might be, well, our staff are untouchable, but discretionary is all the non-staff related expenses. But we've already talked about expansion of library hours could be viewed as discretionary, certainly, even to the point of our current class sizes and whether or not, you know, we could operate in elementary school, not that I'm suggesting this, but we could operate at 30-to-1 across the board. We did it in the past. Having smaller class sizes could be viewed as a discretionary item or an item of, this is, you know, the budget is just a numerical representation of board priorities, of district priorities. So I think that we really have to get our arms around what are the expenditures. And so I was thinking, first 20 minutes or so, an overview of revenue as well as a description of various terms, ADA, LCFF, unrestricted, restricted. Try and go through that as quick as we could to get into the expenditure side. And I was thinking that we could take up a pretty significant amount of time just looking at what personnel do we have where, understanding what the costs associated with that, again, whether it's a library media technician at an elementary school or it's the actual you know, faculty at a site. I think that really understanding the contracted as well as extra hour and hourly support that we have at sites is important as we develop, you know, concepts or philosophies around where the priority should be. So is that
Sounds good to me.
in line with what you guys are thinking?
If we have a lot of people, I would like to hear from them if they want to make comments. I think it would be good to hear from them fairly early on. So that might direct some of those conversations.
And I
as
think,
well.
Hank, you suggested, this is a great idea, is having, you know, sort of like the forums that the League of Women Voters, if we can have index cards and pens, and people think of something, because, you know, obviously we won't be able to have everybody shouting out at the time they think of it. So it'd be great to have those, and they could pass them forward at any time. And if we get to a point, I'll be reading them, or, you know, we can go through those that way.
One of the things that I asked you about and haven't followed up on, in line with the discussion as to our dollars are an example of where our priorities are, I'm curious what the breakdown looks like by department. And I know at the elementary level that's not feasible, really. But at the junior high and high school level, you know, we keep seeing math scores are lower, and that's a priority, but are we putting our money into math? I don't know. Or, you know, we really want to have this theater program. Is that where, you know, really understanding if those are our priorities. Are we putting more money into academics than we are into sports, for example, or extracurriculars? Where is that going, not just personnel-wise, but department-wise? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But that may come at the next meeting, because that sounds.
Well, I think that, again, however, you know, is most logical based on this discussion and subsequent, we can represent the information, whatever, you know, is the most useful for you. I think that having a single standalone meeting focused on the personnel side and a separate meeting focused on the non-personnel, because the level of depth required when we're looking at non-personnel, so because I do feel like this is a board that really does care about understanding that, you know, amorphous, you know, 5800 object code, that professional and other contracted services. To really break that one down, it's going to take time by itself. The 4300, that's the supplies and materials. That one Those two by themselves can be, 1.2 million easily. To actually get a grasp on that level of detail, I think that might need to be separate. But on the person side, on the personnel side, we could present information on, by site, and if the way that, it made most sense was to do it not just at Nordoff, but looking at Nordoff by department expenditures, or by academically related, extracurricular, nutrition services, pool maintenance, or lack thereof. Whatever it might be, we can present that information based on a site, and then at the district office, break down our district office expenditures by department. Could easily be done as well. I mean, these are all different types of reports that we could present and discuss.
And we've said it's 80-something% of our budget, right, is
55,
80,
Right.
so that's a big chunk.
Exactly. Right.
Okay. I think that also would help us address the next, those other things.
Right.
I think one of the things, thinking back on your original thought, Jane, about having conversations regarding the budget even before we talked about a study session. I think where Andy's going is something that I would put under the heading of like a primer. That there was some important notations and categories and acronyms and all kinds of things that apply to, let's call it a school district budget, in this case ours. And it's not something that we have done. We haven't really had that kind of delineation, granular study, and I think that is a good place to start, so that questions, you're a board that asks questions often when you see something presented to you and then you have a question, right? As opposed to trying to know exactly what questions are going to be asked before we get there. You'll have them, we don't know whether they'll be 4 or 40 or somewhere in between, right? I think there might be more for the second than the first, right? Once you get past this kind of initial study. So I think that's a good idea, however you can, and Patty and others can organize that within the next 3 days, that would be good. Okay.
I just want to make sure that within the educational component of it, that there's plenty of time for comment.
Oh, yeah, you can always do that.
Just so we're not bored.
No. Well, if there are only a few people, you can just have to talk to each other. We'll see.
I know it'll be immensely entertaining.
No, I
but
am making no promise on that at all.
Okay, 7.4.2, the board is asked to receive information from Mr. Cantwell and approve the criteria and process for the appointment of members of the Citizens Oversight Committee for Measure J.
So you may recognize both the criteria as well as the application form as looking very similar to what the board approved in 2015. This is now, as we've discussed a few times, the initial COC members were appointed to a 2-year term. Today, based on this information, will be the initiation of requesting to the public, as well as to the current COC members, if they're interested to remain on the COC, to fill out an application, and then we will begin that process that will ultimately lead us to interviews and the selection, potential interviews and the selection of the next configuration of the COC. So current COC members have the ability to serve a second term. We've discussed that we want to make sure that we do have a mix this coming session, if you will, the next 2-year session, of both first term committee members and second term committee members. So that way we don't have a full turnover in the committee in the in 2019. Ultimately, you will be making your appointment to the committee, or the appointment of the members to the committee in the March board meeting. So this will be a roughly 6 to 8 month or 8-week process. Current committee members do not need to fill out the entire application, only the first page and a half or so, to inform you of their desire to remain on the committee. It is ultimately at the board's discretion, though, whether or not exactly the makeup of who they will appoint to that committee. And remember, we do have, and it's on the application, there are statutory requirements around the necessary members necessary demographic information of the committee members. If you look at page 4 of 6 of this agenda item, you can see those demographic factors that must be met by the committee makeup. So that certainly impacts both recruitment and selection of the committee. we will be putting an advertisement in the OVN as well as using the social media channels to try to get the word out that we are requesting for interested individuals to fill out the application.
Do you have any indications that some of the folks on the committee now or do intend to apply to stay?
I don't have, my impression is that the majority of them intend to stay. I do not know, I've not been informed of anyone who is intended to not seek a second term.
Well, I just wonder, I know you referenced that this was what we had said we wanted to do in terms of a mix of new and old. But, you know, candidly, in light of the relatively little action there's been, I just wonder, first, I guess the question is statutorily, can we choose to keep everyone who wants to stay? And then if that's the case, I personally would prefer to send the word out. Any of you willing to stay, we would love to have you, and if all of you are willing to stay, that's perfectly fine, because it
Right, but
seems-
we can add to them. We can actually keep all of them
Right.
and add to them.
My understanding though is you can only serve 2 terms consecutively.
Correct.
So it might be strategic for some to not serve a term so they can come back and serve more. Just, I mean, because we want them, we want good people throughout the term of the.
Right. I just work, you know, it just could feel like a slap in the face to somebody who says, yeah, I wanna come back, and sorry, you know, even though you didn't really do anything in those 2 years, we're going in a different direction. So this is a
Well,
little
that
hard.
actually might be the time to think about expanding the membership, right? If we get everybody that's there now, it might be, to go back to what you're saying, it might be wise to bring some new folks in who won't term out at the end of this term. If the whole committee stays,
Yeah.
they'll all term out at the end of this term.
Right.
But if we have at least some, I mean, assuming they all stay, if we have some new people as well, they can be that bridge, so.
And I think you could also say to them, because so everyone has indicated they would be interested in staying, would any of you also, or instead, consider taking the next 2 years off and coming back and serving the next term? I mean.
It's gonna go long more than 2 years, right?
Certainly.
I hope so.
Well, I mean, it seems like we ought to wait and see if we get candidates. Because we may not have a lot of choice.
So how many are on
Crazy.
currently?
9.
9, and how many can we go up to?
There's no statutory
There's
cap.
no limit, okay.
So,
Well, no, why do they call that, no, never mind.
They don't.
I'm thinking of a different one.
Right, right. Yeah, citizen oversight committees do not have a cap, they only have a minimum. Again, the minimum is based on having membership meet certain criteria. I don't believe it's necessary for the board to make a decision tonight as to whether or not it would like to request, current members to choose to sit out a term. I think that we do need to have some mechanism to know whether or not folks are interested in staying on though, and so that's what I believe, by having them still fill out the application, you're leaving yourself the flexibility to make your determination of whether or not you would consider having someone not be renewed so that they could come back in 2 years. But at least you have the mechanism to know who truly wants to stay on versus who may be interested. Otherwise, we could send an email, I suppose, but it just seems like the most appropriate mechanism to know who does desire. And if all 9 desire to stay on, then right, we could certainly add additional committee members, or we could choose to have a committee that does have a complete turnover, and they would, we would just have a,
Brand new committee.
new committee.
I think there are, I kept all those applications from the last time too, and we did sort of feel like any of those people would have been perfect for the committee, so we could reach out to some of those and say, we are taking applications again.
Yeah, well, Obama, last time we were like, look, you don't have time for this.
Well, now we might.
Cool.
Okay.
So approve that? I think we're asking for.
I think it's just, it says receive information.
You're right, is that-
Oh, and approve
This
the
guy.
criteria, you're
Yeah.
right, okay.
I'll move approval.
Do we need to have a motion first? Oh, you're moving
That is
to,
my
approve. I'm sorry, there you go. It's 8:30. I haven't had dinner
Michael,
yet.
you haven't gotten one in today.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed.
Andy, when you solicit the present members, you'll obviously remind them of the term limitation so they can make that.
Certainly, and that was actually a discussion point during the COC meeting in December. It was even discussed at that time that the committee members are aware that there is that cap.
Jeff would be hard to replace.
Jeff has been a terrific chair.
Yeah.
Measure J update?
So I just, based on, feedback we've received in prior board meetings, we will keep a standing Measure J update item on all future agenda. The update for this month is limited. Unfortunately, we did not do we're not able to complete painting over the winter break, but was not for lack of effort or lack of ability. As far as we had lined up the appropriate painting crew to do it, we had to do hazardous material testing in advance based on the feedback we received when I brought the proposals to you. In November, we did go out and we solicited for additional bids, and so we did have comparison bids for each of the projects. Took the low bid, who happened to be the initial one that we were previously looking at, and they came back with the hazardous material testing at Miramani, the site that we'd lined up the painting crew for, as being far more intensive than we were anticipating. So both they as well as the local painting team felt there was no way timeline-wise to be able to do the abatement work that was necessary and the painting over that short of a window of time, the 2-week break. We don't have the ability to do the abatement separate from the painting because the abatement will make our structures exposed to elements and moisture and other things. So when the abatement occurs, we'll have the painting crew come in right after. But that was ultimately why we were not able to complete painting over the winter break, was the results. We had testing done at Myers Oaks, Miramani, Matilaha, as well as here at Chaparral for the auditorium, and are still working through now building out the scopes on various projects associated with that. We did have the blinds installed at Nordhoff in the single test room. We've got we've received very positive feedback from Russ and his maintenance team, from teachers, as well as from the custodial staff and administration. So based on that, we are going to be putting together a full bid package, a scope based on that blind selection to solicit bids from additional vendors beyond just the one that we currently have the bid for.
And can you remind me why we're choosing the blinds? I mean, we when the measure went out, we heard, roofs and, this big stuff, and blinds sort of seems different.
Well, I certainly hear that, or I can understand that perception. Actually, I think it's one of the areas that have the most direct impact on both the lives of teachers as well as student instruction. As we have greater technology in the classroom, the glare and issues around sunlight exposure to those devices makes it challenging for the feedback I receive from our faculty as well as from students. We also know that there is a clear safety concern when we have both the non-compliant, will be the word, non-compliant blinds that some individuals have chosen to put up in the absence of having another blind, in which we are currently not meeting safety code on the fire retardant nature of the blinds that have been installed. So we have a safety concern there. We also have a security and safety concern on the ability to black out windows in the event of a lockdown situation on campus. We know that it impacts teacher work life and students' instruction. And then ultimately it was frankly lower hanging fruit. It was something that didn't require DSA and allowed us to do something that was impactful for teacher life or for classroom life right away, and we knew it was something that was needed that can also help us with energy efficiency and lowering our utility bill.
And it's just at Nordhoff, right?
Well, we're looking at rolling out across the campus, or across the district. Nordhoff was selected because the initial selection occurred when 7-Eleven committee was still, or when the board deliberations were still occurring regarding elementary schools, and so we felt that to continue to make progress on a priority that was really district-wide, that Nordhoff was an appropriate campus to start with. So we do want to roll it out across the district. We are going to allow autonomy at each school site for just as we had with Nordoff, where we had a group come together, both administrators and teachers. We will do the same thing at the other sites, and of course, we believe we have a product that will be really effective at Nordoff, and we'd love to maintain that same product across the sites. But if the local staff decide, if the staff at that site feel there's a better alternative, then we'll explore that.
One thing, sorry. Well, one thing I think Intner was raising at some point on one of our committees was that he said actually that a blind inside the window is not going to have any thermal effect whatsoever, that a white blind inside the window will simply reflect the light inside the room, and the same heat will be in there. And he was referencing the prospect of a tinting on the window itself instead.
I don't recall that
FYI.
conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was part of that. I do know that these are rated for a certain energy factor I can provide that information, but I will talk to Dave to get more information on that, because I don't think
He's
that's
pretty
part of
good.
it.
I mean, he's like a seer architect. He really knows that stuff. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No question.
Dealing with the windows, though, was on the punch list. This isn't something that just came up to find something quick to do. This was just accelerated.
Right. Exactly.
Given the remediation for asbestos, when do you think you'll get to the painting?
It looks like it's going to be really challenging to do it during the school year, except for potentially at the auditorium, where we do have that flexibility with, not being able to move chaparral's events, somewhat. But the school sites, it does not appear that we'd be able to do the abatement work necessary while school's in session and have painting then following behind on breaks or evenings or that sort of thing.
So we're looking at summer.
So we are looking at summer. We're going to keep working on it and see
With
if
all
there's.
this rain, it's just as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Exactly, yeah. It'd be significant damage to the buildings if in between the abatement being worked on and then the painting, if we had rain, it would cause damage.
To be expected.
Okay, 7.4.4, update on the potential lease.
Oh, yeah, you got that settled?
So-
Got that settled?
Anyways,
So you got that all settled?
yeah, in between when we had a 10-minute break, 8-minute break. I called city council, done.
Good work.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So yes, we did
Go
have
ahead,
a comment
Andy. Tell
earlier.
us the
Yeah.
truth.
So just for your sake, as well as for those watching at home, I want to make sure we know exactly where we are in the process and what next steps could be. So at the November 15th meeting, you did approve a resolution that did 4 things. It officially accepted the 7-Eleven committee report, recommending that this property be declared surplus. You declared the property surplus. You authorized us pursuing the offering of the property to agencies, and then authorized the lease through the public bid process. So understanding again that was a necessary legal step that in no way bound an ultimate conclusion of where we would arrive at with whether or not this property will ever be leased. The next step in the process, legally wise, not that we couldn't do actually what Mr. Wyrick was recommending as far as meeting with the city, would be to send out public notices. Public notices would go to a total of 6 agencies, City of Ojai, and various departments within the City of Ojai, County of Ventura, California Resources Agency, California State Lands Commission, California Natural Resources Agency, and the Ventura County Parks Department. So the city, county, couple state organizations. The only obligation and what that notice informs them of, and what this is just one among the many legal steps required to get to the end goal, is that they do have a right within the 60 days of receiving that notice to request to engage in negotiating with us a fair market value of the property. So unlike in other situations, for instance, the Naylor Act, if we'd been using this as a soccer field in public space, there may be an argument that the city or another agency could have rights under the Naylor Act which would require us to actually give a below fair market value, or offer the property to them to maintain it as open space or recreational space at below fair market value. We are under no obligation, based on the intent to offer this as a ground lease and under its current usage, to offer under that or the other acts which require us to be forced to a below market rate with a partner not of our choosing. Public notice says that within 60 days they would have to notify us of their intent to actually lease the property themselves, and then again our only obligation is to enter into good faith negotiations with that agency, whether it's the city, county, or one of those state agencies. We would not be committed to, if for instance the California Natural Resources Agency notified us of their intent to lease, to negotiate with us on a lease price, we would not be foreclosed from still entering into an arrangement with the city or any other local public or private entity down the road. We just would have to, in good faith, sit down with that state agency. So that's what the public notice period is. We still, separate from the public notice 60-day requirement, would be putting together a bid package. That was the fourth thing, again, that the resolution approved. Remember, Andreas back in October discussed two alternative pathways toward ultimately getting to a potential offer to lease our space from a developer or from another agency. The primary one, the one that statute requires us to go down, is the public bid process. We put together a bid package where we state what we're looking to do. We would state a dollar value that we're looking to receive, as well as the purpose of the lease. We would give, what would probably end up being about a 2 to 3 month timeline. This would be after the public notice period, where individuals could submit a written bid, be in a closed envelope that'd be opened at the actual auction night. At the night of the auction, both the written bids as well as the oral bids that could be provided that evening would ultimately could result in us actually entering into an arrangement if someone does meet our exact specifications, both asking price and what we believe should be done with the property. That's highly unlikely. In fact, I know that we would have many conversations prior to that process of exactly what we think should be done, although I think part of what we want to see is what others' ideas are. And so the alternative process, the one that we're actually, I think, far more likely to go down, is the waiver process. In order to request a waiver, it goes up to the state. This can be roughly about a 6-month process in order to get the waiver approved. In order to make the request for that waiver, we have to have gone through the public notice period. So again, that 60-day period must occur. The waiver itself allows us to actually enter into an RFP where we actually allow others to, instead of having to meet our terms, that they can come with their own terms, their own concept of the property, and then we, or you as a board, would be discussing and ultimately approving. So minimum timeline we're talking about from now, or actually I should say from whenever the public notices go out, would be probably somewhere between 6 on the very, very short end to 15 months before an actual lease might be entered into, and then a 12 to 24 month period likely of due diligence by the actual leasee. So it's possible that we're still 36 months away from any actual change in the use of this space. As far as the roles of various parties, I think we can get into that another date or another meeting, but I think it is important that, I know that it's certainly this board's intention and hangs in mind that we would involve the city. I think it's ultimately, I would support either direction on whether or not we meet with Mr. Wyrick's request as far as having the city meetings prior to the notice period, but I also disagree with his statement of the sending out the notices would foreclose the ability for us to do the exact same level of engagement that I think this board has said that they want to do anyway. So I think that's my update, and I'm happy to take questions if there's anything I can clarify as far as process at this point.
Yeah, what has the thought been about when we should send out public notices, and is that something that we need to vote on, or we've already approved it, right?
You approve the opportunity to do it. So the
So that's, I think we should discuss that a little bit.
Our thought was to bring the issue to the board tonight, independent of Bill coming, or then including Bill coming. Where, in what order do you want to do things? And, you know, ultimately, we can get to the same place. It's going to be a long process anyway. We could send out the public notices this week, or we could wait until some later point in time to do more like the kind of thing Bill was talking about. So that was our thought. Thought was to give you the opportunity to hear Andy's presentation, which we called sort of a local update to Andreas's more general presentation, right? So it's local to us, given the circumstances that exist here, and then give you the opportunity to say, you know, go forward this week with the next step, which would be public notices, or let's do the sit-down conversation with the entity which ultimately will have some say, right, before we do public notices.
So that was my interpretation, because at first when he spoke, that was not I didn't know what he was saying, but at the end,
Yeah, I
it's
think
sort of
that's
like
what
he's
he was saying.
saying, if the city wants to do something with this property, they'll need more than 60 days to come up with an idea. So he's asking us to wait so that we can meet and discuss it, so that there's the beginnings of ideas, and then have
So
the
the
60
question,
days.
Andy, really is, do they need an idea? Do they actually need an idea within the 60 days? Or if not an idea, if we did send out the public notices soon, they didn't have an idea, concept, whatever it is that fit within the strategic plan of the city, then what would be the minimum thing they would need to come up with if it's not an idea?
They would need to inform us by day 60 of their desire to begin negotiations on their lease of the property.
Right,
So that in no way requires them to actually have a concept of what they would desire to do with the property. I think it is, I'm not familiar with council's current level of interest as far as if they would potentially be interested in being the party who does the leasing, or if they want to just make sure that they're involved in the ultimate, you know, decision this board comes to as far as who, you know, what type of development might occur here, what type of use of this property may result. There's no question they're going to be involved in that process. As he said appropriately, that there are various ways in which the city is going to intersect with this board on rezoning and ultimately on some other matters. So the city will certainly be involved and will have involvement, or will be able to have an influence on the, you know, final determination of the use of this property. However, again, the actual 60-day notice period would not, certainly wouldn't preclude them from being involved in the rest of the process, and also wouldn't even require that they have their concept in place if they were wanting to become the ones to lease themselves, if they want to become a tenant of ours.
But the 60-day notice, because I heard a lot of talk about partnership, right? And if I'm hearing you correctly, the 60-day notice is for an entity to say, I want it.
Correct.
Not I want to partner with you.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And so if they wanted to partner with us, then this would not preclude that.
Correct.
If, as long as there was, and if somebody else were to say that they wanted the property, is that a done deal? I mean,
No,
if
so
one of
again, the requirement is that we enter into good faith negotiations. Actually, I have an excerpt from the notice that I have received the notices from our attorney. So again, we could send out those notices as early as later this week if we have the go-ahead. But Government Code Section 54222 states that you have 60 days following receipt of this letter in which to notify the district in writing of your intent to lease the property, at which time the district will enter into good faith negotiations pursuant to another government code to determine a mutually satisfactory rental price. So again, all that their response to us within 60 days must say is that they are interested in leasing. We then have a period of time of where we must then respond of a time for us to sit down together and negotiate. The responsibility is that we enter into a good faith negotiation on a rental price. If a rental price cannot be agreed upon after the good faith negotiation period, the district may offer the property for lease to the general public in accordance with California law. So even if, let's say, one of the state agencies did notify us within that 60-day parameter, we sat down with them in good faith, we did discuss, you know, what the board, the community, you know, wanted to see happen to this property. We couldn't come to a meeting of the minds of what their desire for the property was or their price for the property. We would be under no legal compulsion to accept their offer. It must be a mutually agreed upon rental price and concept.
Is there a statutory length for the good faith negotiation?
You know, I don't know that. I'll check with our attorney on the actual negotiation period.
The other question is, if we're using the waiver process, is there anything that would prevent the city from making a proposal to us for a project just
Certainly
like
not.
anybody else?
Right, no.
Yeah, so.
Nothing would preclude them.
There, I mean, so my feeling is we ought to talk to them before we send out notices. I think, you know, we're neighbors, we're friends, we ought to do that. But it doesn't seem like that notice period really would have any practical effect on whether we enter into any kind of
Well,
agreement with the
and I
city.
mean, I've never heard anyone from the city talk about, and maybe that's what we need to say to them, is that give us a date when you're gonna have a meeting and talk about, I mean, that the city would lease this? Well, the city doesn't have money, from what
They
I
never said.
understand. They don't have the money to do this. Absolutely, they wanna have input on what type of company we lease to, and that would, they would have to, we would want them to. They don't have the funds to develop this property. So, but, you know, obviously, I don't mind saying, you know, well, you know, if you can have that meeting by March 1st or something, then we'll send out the notices on March 1st. But to push our project and to wait, you know, the community, our 7-Eleven committees have told us, we want you to move on this. Why have you been waiting? And,
There's no apparent reason to wait,
Yeah.
in my estimation.
I don't see why, just two things for the record. One, I think the city holding an agenda item on this during our meeting is not helpful to the process, if anybody's watching. And number two, it was brought up that there's been no discussion on this. I recall specifically being in a meeting with the city, talking about the zoning of this property, where they asked us to change the zoning, and we agreed to do it. So, it may be before some of the current city council members were there, but it happened.
I'm of the mind that you just shared, though, Thane, which is that this is going to be a highly charged subject in our city, in our town, and we're just beginning it. And it seems to me that if the city wants to sort of have a joint meeting and invite public and have some kind of, you know, broad visioning sort of idea session, that we should do it. I don't think the answer here is to look for the legal technicalities, and while the 7-Eleven committee did suggest we do it, we are doing it, but I think we have to do it in a way that's honestly, frankly, bending over backwards to accommodate the multiple viewpoints that we're gonna hear about this really important piece of property in the center of our town. And I think the optics of going forward are bad, and I don't think it really accomplishes much.
well, we don't yet have a view of what the city, I mean, we have one councilman.
Right.
So we'll wait till they talk about it tonight and see, I mean, maybe the rest say, well, that's a lease, we're not interested in the lease, we're interested in talking to them
I
about.
think cutting to the chase, what's going on is there's abundant issue in this town for affordable housing. And apparently, as he said, on their general plan is a reference to this property as somehow being available potentially for housing. And I think that's what's going on. So, you know, and there are a lot of people in this town who believe that affordable housing is like our biggest, missing element, and even people who think that would bring kids to our school district.
Here are a couple issues. I think the two of you had each used a word that was interesting and I think really important. One is optics and the other is one council member, or that's more than one word. But the fact is that unless I missed something in both tonight's presentation from Bill and a couple of informal conversations I had with him, he's not representing a city council position. He is coming to speak to the board. He came to speak to the board on his own. He informed somebody or bodies think you talked to Johnny Johnson, he said he was gonna do it. There hasn't been any formal position taken by the city council on it. But I think in terms of optics, the issue here is not so much, I think what he's saying, and I'm just giving you a thought, it's not so much what we could do legally after passing a resolution. I think that, the issue really is what is the most important way of stating that we are in fact working together, okay? The other thing is a matter of timing. I think what he also is saying is we may not be ready within 60 days to say anything. They haven't even dealt with the issue, except ironically tonight, which is about the only time the whole year where we have a conflict of meetings, okay? Because we work so hard not to have a conflict of meetings, working with all of your schedules and their own, because they're always second and fourth. So I would think at a minimum it would be, and I'm sort of getting to a point here of saying it would be better not to give us the authority or tell us to go send out the notices this week. I think it'd be just interesting to see what happened at the city council meeting, and say, because we'll at least get some advice, some thoughts, some like, here's what's coming. The majority or the unanimous view of the city council is, please ask the board to do X, which is different than one city council member coming forward and saying, here's my view, right? So, we don't lose anything, at least in learning that, put it back on the agenda on February 7th, and set a date either for us to get together within a couple of weeks, right? And have that meeting or something else, depending on what the city council does tonight. That's sort of what I think he said, the impact of what he said, the optics and all that. I would defer sending out the notices until after, in our situation, February 7th. That's what I would do.
I would agree with Jane, though. I think it can't be indefinitely postponed. Honestly, with all respect to anybody out there that's listening, we've been talking about this since I was elected.
Sure.
And that's 2 years. It's no surprise. It's been in the paper. We've had massive meetings. We've had all kinds of stuff to talk about this. So for the council to come to us tonight, as we're starting to put the train on the tracks, say, whoa, we want to think about this. I appreciate it that they're there now, but they should have been there last year.
Well, I just don't know if it's a they.
I don't know who it is.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say.
Whoever it is, they, he, she, whatever, they in the singular or the plural.
Right.
This is not the first time this has come up. I'm concerned that you say that we cannot start to obtain the waiver until we've done all of these preliminary things. And that the waiver itself could take up to a year to get, if I heard you correctly.
6 months or so is what the waiver typically is. The waiver is initiated by board resolution, and that board resolution states, and is my understanding, and I will confirm, but from multiple conversations with our council, it does state in there, because it's statutorily must, that we have already sent out the public notices, and he did say that the state board that will be reviewing that waiver wants to see that have occurred. It's actually pretty unusual to request the waiver in advance of having done the public bid process altogether. And Andreas, if you recall, talked about that could be, we know it's very, very unlikely that we would have a lease come out of that bid process. What could come out of that process would be us beginning to get a greater sense of fair market value on the property, as well as some potential ideas that then help give greater flexibility when we're looking at, or greater knowledge to us as we begin that alternative process.
Well, I think a mutual commitment to joint meetings with the city council, which I think are appropriate over this, absolutely, and with the planning commissioner, whoever wants to, give us their input, coupled with a time certain, or at least a tentative time certain when we send the notices out, seems to make sense to me. I didn't hear any time frame.
No.
And I'm uncomfortable leaving it open completely.
Well, one thing we can certainly do before we get 10 elected officials together and a mayor, or maybe the mayor would be included in this, is to at least have Andy and I, Steve McClary, and another staff member to put together a sort of a joint report, to the council, to the board, and say, here's what the city council is thinking, the board has already done this, and there is a very definite feeling on the part of the board, this thing needs to go forward, right? And we've done a lot of work, but we're in the spirit of cooperation and all the things that will be needed to be done to make this thing work over a long period of time, we're amenable to figuring out a calendar that works, that kind of thing. But have that on the February 7th agenda so that you can formally act on it.
Yeah.
This is a little bit amorphous right now, right? Whatever it is, we'd like to present it to you. To answer your question, Thane, remember that you asked the question, the it tonight was to just give you an update, and we were gonna do that whether Bill came or not. Okay.
And just based on my experience, I want to say, at least from my perspective, I voted to move forward so we could get information.
Exactly.
Not because we decided to do anything.
And this,
Yeah, I'll add, and by the way, Jane, I thought your email was fabulous on the subject. It is a little frustrating to be dealt with preemptively as if you're not doing something or not inclined to do something, which to me is the very spirit of this board, which has always been very much to not dictate to other people, but to really gain consensus and listen to people and see what people think. So that was frustrating.
And moving forward does not preclude us from doing any of the things that we publicly said that we would do, right?
No, that's
It doesn't
right.
preclude us from having the public meetings, it doesn't preclude us from talking to the city. We've said these things repeatedly.
Yeah.
And the notice, the only piece potentially that the notice forecloses is the city taking the property independently by themselves,
Yes.
right?
Which it doesn't foreclose that, because they could still,
They could still come to us during the
be
proposal.
one of the, folks at either the bid process or the waiver RFP process. What it.
First
all-
right of refusal.
All it does is the first right to enter negotiations.
Right.
If, let's just say hypothetically, this board decided that affordable housing was all you were interested in, that's exactly what you wanted on this site, and the city wanted to be a lessee and partner with a separate, housing authority or housing agency or developer, that if they were given that 6-day notice period, could sit down with us and have a right to, to the property for that purpose in advance of any other old housing authority or partner or, a developer who wants to do affordable housing. So they have a right to enter negotiations prior to others, but they are not precluded from negotiating at the same time as everyone else.
If we did that and went through that negotiation process, do we have to accept or decline that negotiation before we went out to bid further? Does that make sense?
Yes, but that doesn't keep them from still being a party to that broader, or that bid
They come back
subsequent.
to the second bid.
Yeah.
But we
There's-
have to say yes or no to this.
We have to, before we move on, we have to have, again, the legal, phrasing is that we are required to enter into negotiations in good faith. If we are not able to arrive at a mutually agreed upon, rental price, then we have the ability to go out to a broader bid, which again, they could be part of that broader bid, but that we no longer must stay with them, and negotiate. Them, not just city, any of those agencies that we've talked about that would have a right to that first opportunity for negotiation.
I just think that, Andy, I think this is more than just nomenclature. I think there's a difference between sitting down and having a conversation before a formal action is taken, i.e. send out the public notices, and entering into formal negotiations.
Agreed.
I think the latter term is, I think, pretty antithetical to what we were saying last month. Mike, your point was, make sure that people understand this is an interactive process, right? And that we're gonna be getting information. And I acknowledge you can get information the day after you send out the public notices. But if you talk before you send out the public notices, I think you're sending a different message. Because if the public notices start a process of negotiations, I think that's a much more formal and assertive and active process than sitting down and talking first, right? Which is not exactly what he said, but it's sort of what he said, and I'm not into, who has what authority over whom, right now, because again, I don't even know what the city council's view is. But my suspicion is that by the time they're done with their meeting tonight, that they will essentially agree that they would like to sit down and talk before a formal action of the board, i.e. sending out public notices, occurs. That would be my guess.
I think all the questioning though is it because of the legalities, are we precluding ourselves from anything, or is it just optics? And it sounds like it's just about.
It's more, but I think
which is important.
Public-
I don't mean to
public-
suggest that
yeah.
it's not important.
Right,
But-
public, right. I guess what I would say is, public decision-making, particularly when there's more than one body involved, does often take you down the road of being at least respectful of the other party, okay? So the more assertive one party is, which then causes the other party to have to react, rather than sitting down and talking first to agree on what the action is, right? I think you send a different message by sitting down first. That would be my view of this. So, what would you like to do?
I would like to move to carry this over to our next board meeting, at which point we will have a more definitive understanding of what exactly the city council is proposing, and also, as Michael said, presumably be in a position to talk specifics about deadlines and the, our desire to move forward with some expediency.
I'll second that.
I would just like to add, if we could ask staff to coordinate.
Oh, you bet.
The city, so that we can get a report.
We will do that.
About, what the interest is and, what a good process would be ideally to move
Yeah,
forward.
yeah, I would think now that there is an elected mayor, who's not a city council member, since none of you is there, I would not to have any of those people there, just sort of for optics, okay? And then maybe Johnny and Andy and Steve and I could sit down and talk about it. Yeah.
So you still second?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, this is actually an information item, so we
Yeah,
can't
that's
take
right, that's
action.
okay. We know what
But
you
we
want.
can
We know
put
what
it
you
on the
want.
calendar.
We got it.
No.
We know what
Right?
you want. We understand what you'd like. Okay, good point, Kathy, thank you. You saved us on that one. You saved us from a serious Brown Act violation.
So I think we are to you, Hank,
Okay,
superintendent.
well, just before I read you a sentence that I wrote to the board this morning, I absolutely need to dial the tape back to agenda item 7.1.1 when the board approved the teacher contract, but actually even before that, with comments from Merv and Angie. And so I learned a lot. First of all, thank you again for your nice compliments to everybody around this table for the work that was involved in getting us to that point. But what I learned, Angie, was after all these years, I really need to work on my glare. Okay? So, Chuck, do you feel glared at? Huh? Your negotiations are yet coming, so I'm gonna work on my glare. Okay. That's glare, in the personal sense, as opposed to stopping the glare with the blinds. Okay? But you get it? All right, so that's why the English language is so hard, right? You got a verb, you got a noun, you got all kinds of stuff going on. Okay, all right, so the sentence that I'm gonna read you first is the following. As you know, this is to the board, my reports tend to be quite brief, acknowledging the post 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m., or 9 p.m. time slot, right? We're now in the third of those three. So I'm opting for the shortest version. Yet, the only issue that I really want to talk about tonight is a very important one. But like the issue we just decided would have a more formal construct to it on February 7th, the same thing applies here. It's the issue that emanated from Tom Torlickson's email to all superintendents stating that LA Unified and Sacramento School District had adopted the Safe Haven resolution and urging, I think was the right verb, urging school districts to do the same. I read a lot of stuff over the winter break and thought it was interesting. As soon as we'd get to it, I felt that there clearly were some legal aspects to it. Kevin raised some really important questions. And so to get sort of the end of the story, what I would recommend, and the board knows why I'm recommending this, is that we don't really do too much on this tonight except acknowledge that it's a very important issue across the state, I would argue across the nation. And that on the February 7th agenda, potentially, at least on the February 7th agenda, I will give you a report on what I've learned through a variety of forums, more reading of legal opinions. We have our own district counsel's opinion. I've read 3 other law firm opinions. I've read some CSBA text, California School Board Association text. I've asked the county superintendent, again, the board knows this, to put this issue on the county superintendent's agenda, county superintendent's plural, agenda on January 20th, so we'll talk about it. I'll learn what some other districts are doing. As you would expect, districts vary tremendously in terms of the intensity of this issue and how it's being handled. For example, in Oxnard, with the very high percentage of families who might have been affected by this, and the size of this, the 200,000 community member district, pretty much, district and city are pretty coterminous. The Board of Education, the police, and lawyers, and all kinds of people are lined up working on this. So I'll be learning a lot, and I enjoy this kind of issue. So I'll be learning a lot over the next couple of weeks. I'll keep the board informed, and then I'll work with Jane in particular and others of you who have an opinion about maybe how to proceed on this to get something more definite on the February 7th agenda. But I want to sort of end a little monologue here with where I started on this issue 6 days after the election. You remember, of course, that there was very reasonable fear on the part of many people in the country about how to interpret some things that were said during the campaign. Obviously, people are free to feel how they feel. And so superintendents across the country, not everyone, but certainly a high percentage, were writing letters to their communities, both internal, students, staff, parents, and the external community about that school district's, that superintendent's view. And I'm sure I made it impossible to misunderstand how important I've always felt that safety and respect are paramount. You heard that tonight from Carol Paquette, for example, are paramount. If you don't have a safe place, you can't have a place to learn. So this goes way beyond that. And the issue, of course, is, just to give you a sort of a quote from our council, in part the adoption of this kind of resolution recommended by Superintendent Torlakson doesn't really appear to have immediate legal urgency, although it might have political and emotional impacts. One of the things that our council was concerned about is that we, by adopting the kind of language that Superintendent Torlakson is urging, we would be overpromising, and that we would be trying to say to people that we can protect you against certain kinds of federal government involvement that we can't do. Okay? So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be learning about what are appropriate ways to say in January, February, what I said in mid-November. For example, the terminology, instead of safe haven, which has a legal focus to it that might take us in a direction we can't implement, that using the term our attorney suggests is something like safe resource centers, which is sort of weird, or non-threatening zones, which is less weird, but at least it tells an updated story about what we might be able to do. So that's my plan, to get resolution on this issue, however we resolve it, at the February 7th meeting, and keep you informed along the way. So I don't know, I know you're not feeling well, but do you have any?
I'm better,
You okay?
believe it or not. It's just the cough is kind of.
No, that's okay. I mean, I know you had some.
No, I appreciate, you're as sophisticated as a superintendent could be on these issues, and I was there at the meeting that we had right after the election, and I thought it was fabulous, and I thought that the spirit and the comments that were made were at the best of kind of the Ojai vibe, and my only concern about this kind of safe haven thing is, as you said, that you're, and I think it's similar to Jane's, that you're making promises and saying things that just don't have any force in law, and thus are misleading and potentially confusing to people. So I did reach out to the California School Board Association, I think I forwarded you
You did.
his email.
Hmm?
You know, he totally gets it. I mean, he's like, God, you know, he's like, when I got your email, I was like, man, this is really, you know, we gotta figure this out. He doesn't have an answer. And I emailed every single lawyer on staff at the Department of Education, and not one of them responded.
That's
20 of them.
really encouraging.
Wow.
Any other thoughts?
One thing that concerned me about the letter from Torlakson was the idea of encouraging us to dispose of some records and keep other records. It sounds like a good way to end up in jail for obstruction of justice. I think if we have a policy to keep records, then we keep records, or to not keep records, to not keep records. But to keep or not keep based on what kind of records they are, I think is a really dangerous path to take. So there were a number of things about his letter that struck me as political rather
Yeah,
than
they were.
practical.
They were. They were.
Along those lines, though, if we choose to, there are legalities as to who can have those records, is my understanding, and letting the public know what can be done with those records so that there isn't a fear from families in disclosing too much to the school district, so that those boundaries are understood.
Right. No, and like I said, when I was running a prepaid card program for a bank, and we had a policy of not keeping any records, because I think banks run a risk when they keep personal ID or records of any kind. So a policy to not keep records, just to view them, approve them, and not keep them, is perfectly appropriate.
We don't have the luxury of not having records.
Well, no, I mean like copies of IDs or.
Oh, yeah, there's some, well, yeah.
Or housing,
I see what you're saying.
or.
Well, and as to immigration status, I was saying to the CSFD guy that it sort of reminds me of the packages that say gluten-free when it's corn, and we all know corn doesn't have gluten.
Right.
We don't have those records. We don't have immigration status. That's not we don't keep it anywhere. So to say to somebody, don't worry, we won't give anyone your immigration status, is actually worse than the actual truth, which is we don't have that information. We don't want that information. We've never collected it, and it doesn't exist in our school district.
But I do wonder if families fear that we do have that information.
Well, then what we should be
And
saying
so I
is we
think-
don't have that
exactly.
information, not that we won't give it out.
Right, absolutely.
I like the idea of emphasizing where we are, because nothing has really changed yet, right? No new
nothing.
demands have been made on us.
No.
Nothing has actually happened. I don't want to feed a panic.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that there's a difference between a 200,000 person community, 85% of which is Hispanic, and a 30,000 or so Valley community with a significant Hispanic population, but, we're so tightly knit that, people just know who each other is predominantly and know that there's safety in all of our places. Not that Oxnard is unsafe, it's just they have challenges, they have challenges that we can't imagine when you have a 16,000 student elementary district, a 16,000 student high school district, 32,000 kids, right, between the two districts. So, anyway, it's.
My other concern, though, is I don't want to paint a target on our back for the federal government.
No.
Because if I'm the federal government looking to make an example, I'm not going to go after a district with a huge legal budget. I'm going to go after somebody.
We got our legal counsel opinion right here. Anyway, that's the only thing I want to share with you. I don't have anything else.
Items for future agenda. We are still, Michael, from you requested the last time, AB 288 update.
I'll be working on that too. I'll work on that too. If there's time at the county superintendent's meeting, I'm gonna try to get that discussed too.
Yeah, I saw that in the plan too.
Yeah.
Yep. You started
No,
with it?
we've got more to do.
Okay, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve consent calendar?
move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. I believe that's the end.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Oh, that's it.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.